Chapter 1. This was a nameless continent. On a sunny day, there were no clouds or wind. The scorching sun in the sky projected endless rays of light, as if it wanted to roast the entire continent. Suddenly, from somewhere in the sky, a faint brilliance flashed extremely abruptly, and what appeared with the brilliance was a strange ring. This ring came from nowhere, and no one knew where it was going. It appeared so suddenly, as if it had just passed through the void, through time and space. With an indescribable speed, it shot towards the mountain peak below. That strange humming sound was short and light. Usually, anything that flew in from outer space would leave a trail of thick smoke behind it. It was extremely loud, as if it wanted the entire continent to see it and announce its arrival. Today, this object was different. It only made a sound for a short moment, and then with a long poochy sound, it drilled deep into the rocks of the mountain peak, disappearing without a trace. This time was extremely short, and it did not cause any reaction. Even the birds nearby did not have time to fly up. The birds that were slow to react flew up in shock. They only circled a few times in the air and then fluttered back down. They were minding their own business and did not know that a mysterious object had appeared on this continent. After many years, mulberry fields changed. Things remained the same, but people changed. The mountain peak sank year by year and turned into a mountain slope. Many places also became flat land. Gradually, there were signs of human habitation, and some people even lived around the mountain slope. And this mysterious ring, what exciting story could it bring? No one knew. Until today, a thin and small person stood on the left side of the mountain slope. Zhang Xiaohua was very happy. His face was full of happiness, and he stood on the mountain slope. His eyes stared passionately at the wasteland in front of him, as if this land was a piece of delicious pork belly. In fact, rather than calling it a wasteland, it was better to call it a mountain because this piece of land was in the middle of a mountain slope. It was just that this slope was relatively gentle, and only about 4% of the land could be opened up. But even this piece of land was the result of Zhang Xiaohua's father painstakingly persuading the clan leader for nearly 2 months. Zhang Xiaohua also knew that there were many barren mountains in the village, and there was very little land that could grow crops. So everyone wanted to find a place to grow food outside of their original land. Most of the other people in the village looked for barren land near the river, and his family did not have the money to bribe the clan leader, so they looked further and looked for places that others did not want. After looking everywhere, their eyes fell on this piece of land. Zhang Xiaohua's village was called Guizhuang House. The area was about 4 miles, and it was surrounded by mountains on 2 sides. This mountain was not high, and it was more appropriate to call it a hill. A large river flowed from the entrance of the village. There was a small bridge over the river that connected to a small road in the neighboring village. There were about 40 families living in the Guo manor. Half of them had the surname Guo. It was a small family. The people with the surname Guo lived in the middle of the village, and the rest of the people naturally lived scattered around the village. The people in the village were very simple, but they were also unscrupulous. Most of the matters in the Guizhuang house were handled by the clan leader of the Guo family. Although they lived in the same village, their surnames were different, and when the clan leader handled matters, it was inevitable that he would be biased towards the clan. The good residential locations in the village, and the good crops outside the village were mostly in the hands of the villagers with the surname Guo. However, they were still fellow villagers. Although there were many small matters, big disputes had never appeared in the small Guizhuang house, and the people in the Guizhuang house felt that they were living a peaceful life. Zhang Xiaohua's mother, Guo Sufei, was a member of the Guizhuang house. It was considered a branch of the Guo family, and it was once glorious. However, in her mother's generation, other than Guo Sufei, there was no other male in the family. Moreover, Zhang Xiaohua's grandfather, Guo Shan, also had a daughter at an old age and raised her until it was time for her to get married. It was also when the two of them were old, and in order to support the elderly, Zhang Xiaohua's father, Zhang Kai, married into the Guizhuang house. In fact, although it was called marrying into the family, Guo Shan viewed Zhang Kai in a new light. He even allowed Zhang Kai's son to take the surname Zhang, and never once haggled with Zhang Kai. Therefore, Zhang Kai was even more sincere towards the Guo family. It was said that the wealth of a rural family was mostly related to the labor in the family. Guishan did not have a son, and before Guisufei was born, he had always wanted to have a son as his stepfather. However, due to various problems, it did not happen. Thus, the family was supported by Guishan alone, and the family's poverty could be seen from this. Zhang Kai did not disappoint. After he married into the Gui family, he was an expert in farming. In terms of increasing the family's labor, he far surpassed his father-in-law, Guishan. 1 year after the wedding, Guisufei was pregnant and gave birth to a grandson for Guishan. He was named Zhang Xiaolong. When Guishan and his wife saw the birth of their grandson, they were very gratified. Just as the family was looking forward to a bright future, Guishan fell ill from overwork and could not leave his bed. Illness was undoubtedly a disaster for a poor family. In order to treat his father-in-law's illness, Zhang Kai sold all of his valuables. However, he still could not save Guishan's life, which was like a candle in the wind. When Zhang Xiaolong was 2 years old, he passed away suddenly. What made Guishan rest in peace was that his second grandson or granddaughter was about to be born. For this reason, before his death, Guishan named his children. The boy would be called Zhang Xiaohu, and the girl would be called Zhang Xiaohua. After Guishan passed away, Zhang Kai's mother-in-law's health also deteriorated. Fortunately, Zhang Xiaohu's birth slightly reduced the old woman's grief, and thus, the family's peaceful life was preserved. The life of a farmer was not about working in the fields or going home to eat. Their lifeblood was the land. In the past, Zhang Xiaohu's family was not very prosperous, so the land could be used. As Zhang Xiaolong and Zhang Xiaohu grew up, Zhang Kai had always been worried about the land. At the very beginning, he and his wife, Guisufei, took Zhang Xiaolong and Zhang Xiaohu to the patriarch's house to kowtow and pay their respects. Perhaps because of Guishan's face, the patriarch gave them a small plot of land by the river, which could be considered as solving Zhang Xiaohu's urgent problem. Zhang Xiaohua was born when his eldest brother was 7 years old. At that time, the family already had 2.5 laborers, and the family's poverty situation was slightly alleviated. Speaking of Zhang Xiaohua's birth, it was quite magical. The weather was originally dry for more than 2 months, but on the night of Xiaohua's birth, there was a sudden rainstorm. The rainfall in the mountains increased sharply, and the small river outside the village did not even cross the small bridge. The scene was very frightening. When Guisufei gave birth to Xiaohua, she also saw a sky full of flying flowers. Therefore, Zhang Kai's expectations for Xiaohua were very high. When he was naming her, he even asked the teachers of the neighboring villages for reference. There were many names such as Zhang Jin, Zhang Yu, Zhang Shueyo, and so on. However, after picking and choosing, he was dazzled and did not know which one was better. In the end, when he thought of the sky full of flying flowers and his deceased father, Guisufei went against the objections of others and gave Zhang Xiaohua such a popular name. Although Zhang Xiaohua was a standard boy. At this time, Xiaohua was already 12 years old. Children of farmers always matured early. As early as a few years ago, Xiaohua had already been busy with the affairs of the farm with her father and 2 brothers. It was not that Zhang Kai did not think of sending the children to school to learn how to read and write. When they grew up, they would be literate and seek scholarly honors. However, Gui village was a small village and there were not many scholars in the village. They could not afford a small school. The school in the neighboring village belonged to another big family, and the fees for Gui village's children were high. Xiaolong and Xiaohu could not think about it. At that time, the family was poor, and Zhang Kai wanted to but could not. When Xiaohua was young, he also sent her to school for a few days. According to the teacher, Xiaohua's aptitude was only average in the school. Even if she tried her best, she would only be literate. If she wanted to seek scholarly honors, it would be like the moon in the water. Zhang Kai weighed his wallet and looked at Xiaohua's thick eyebrows and big eyes. He gave up on his hopes and brought the children back to Guizhuang House, which was the main occupation of the farmers. However, Xiaohua's mother seemed to remember the auspicious omen of Xiaohua's birth. From time to time, she would ask the young literate people in the village to teach Xiaohua some things. Although Xiaohua liked to follow her brother to do farm work, her mother forced her to learn a lot of words. She could read some things, and she could be considered the literate person in the family. As long as it was related to words, Zhang Xiaohua would take care of it. Today was Zhang Xiaohua's first day of farming alone. Her father had told her yesterday that this piece of land was for her. It was a rice bowl that belonged to her. Although it was still a piece of land that did not show any signs of farming, Xiaohua remembered that a scholar in the village once said that once you have a goal, you can start. Once you have a start, you are halfway to success. Once you have success, you are not far away from your hope. And Xiaohua's hope was to eat a piece of pork belly to her heart's content. The November day was already the beginning of winter. The sun cast a bleak light and heat on the head. The mountain wind blew through the slope, causing the treetops to rustle. Everything showed the silent desolation. However, Zhang Xiaohua did not have the time to pay attention to these. He held the hoe and only blindly worked on this piece of land, working hard to reclaim the land. According to Zhang Xiaohua's plan, first, they would dig an oval or quadrangular boundary around the land in the middle of the hillside. Then, they would remove the mountain rocks in this piece of land, clean up the small stones, and then deal with the weeds. When it gradually grew into a large scale, they would cultivate the entire field carefully, laying a good foundation for planting seeds. Farming always took time. When Xiaohua finished cleaning up the surroundings and was ready to remove the large stones in the field, it was already noon. Xiaohua stopped farming and wiped the sweat on his forehead. He went to the field and took a jar of water prepared by his mother. He gulped down half of the water in the jar. Then, he stretched his body and patted his waist that had not been straightened. He felt a burst of comfort. Also, although he used to work with his father and brothers, after all, because he was the youngest, everyone did not let him do too much work. He did not feel too tired. Now that he was shouldering all the work, he knew the hardships. However, when he thought about his grandmother, his mother, his home, and his future, his heart felt that it was very worth it. Zhang Xiaohua learned to read from the young scholars. Although he was not serious, he often heard them talk about the future, life, love, and so on. He had some impressions. When he was working on weekdays and had nothing to do, he would occasionally think about his life. But soon he would be defeated by reality and bow his head to face the ground. Thinking about these at this moment, it was probably a daydream and a leisure time in the midst of work. Just when Zhang Xiaohua's imagination was running wild, his stomach kept growling. It seemed that it was time to eat. In the past, he would eat at home with his mother. Now, he was independent and started farming. When he came out in the morning, his mother said that the food would be sent to the field at noon. Looking at the time, it should be here. Sure enough, a voice came from the bottom of the hill. Xiaohua, come and help your mother. There was a steep slope from the bottom of the hill. It was very slippery. The last time he came to see the field, Zhang Kai fell. Zhang Xiaohua quickly replied, "Mother, wait a moment. I will go down immediately. You don't have to come up first." When Zhang Xiaohua walked down the hill, he saw his mother. She was holding a bamboo basket and standing on the side of the road waiting for him. Zhang Xiaohua took the bamboo basket and carefully helped his mother walk up the hill. He let his mother sit on a stone and then lifted the cloth on the basket. Inside was a bowl of streaky pork and a few pieces of coarse flour steamed buns. Xiaohua sensibly asked his mother if she had eaten. His mother's answer was not unexpected. She had already eaten. Seeing Xiaohua wolfing down the food, Guosufei felt a little distressed. She said to Xiaohua, "Eat slowly. Don't choke. Drink some water quickly." "Mother, why did you suddenly make streaky pork?" Xiaohua asked. "Today is your first day working. Your father told me yesterday to make streaky pork as a reward for you." Xiaohua's mother lovingly looked at her youngest son and said, "It's been hard on you. Xiaohua, you are only 12 years old this year. Look at the children in the neighboring village who are your age. They are still studying in school. You are working in the field alone. Didn't my eldest brother also work separately from my father when he was 10 years old? What am I doing? Moreover, this land is mine. My second brother shares a piece of land with my eldest brother. I can't be happier." Xiaohua saw that his mother was starting to nag and quickly asked, "What about my grandmother? Did she eat streaky pork?" "Your grandmother is in her 80s. How can she eat this? I made millet porridge for her." Xiaohua's mother said, "You only thought of your grandmother now after eating. Your grandmother was thinking about you all morning." Xiaohua scratched his head embarrassedly. It seemed that he really didn't think so much. Speaking of Xiaohua's grandmother, Guosufei's face was clouded over again. As the children grew up, the family's life gradually improved. However, Little Blossom's grandmother's health was getting worse and worse. Although 80 years old was considered a rare longevity for people in the countryside who wouldn't want their elders to accompany them for a longer period of time. Recently, Xiaohua's grandmother was blind. Guosufei and Zhang Kai discussed getting a doctor to take a look. However, Xiaohua's grandmother strongly disagreed. She said that it was normal for someone so old to be blind. She didn't want to spend any more money on it. The couple couldn't stand the old lady, so they agreed. Now, the old lady worked hard at home every day. She fed the chickens and pigs in the dark. Seeing that Xiaohua had finished eating and drinking, Guosufei said, "Xiaohua, don't work so much in the afternoon. Come home early. Grandmother misses you. I still have to send food to your father and brother." Xiaohua was stunned. "Mother, I finished the streaky pork. What will father and brother eat?" "It doesn't matter. There are other dishes. Remember to work less in the afternoon. Don't catch a cold." Guosufei stroked Xiaohua's head lovingly. She looked at her little son who was so anxious that his face was red. It was as if he was still the little boy who acted spoiled in front of her. When Zhang Xiaohua helped her mother down the slope and looked at her mother's back, she felt very guilty. "Sigh, why did I eat all the streaky pork?" Chapter 2. In the afternoon, the mountain was still cold, and Zhang Xiaohua was still enthusiastic. However, the progress of the reclamation in the afternoon was not as smooth as the morning. There were a lot of rocks on the wasteland, and many of them were buried in the ground. It was not easy to dig up the ground and pry up the big rocks. When the sun set in the west and dusk came, Zhang Xiaohua had only moved a few rocks. His hand was injured first, and the web between his thumb and forefinger was cracked. In the cold wind, he felt a burst of pain. After all, he was still a teenager. Looking back at the wasteland that he had been busy with for the whole day, although he was a little reluctant, Zhang Xiaohua still carried the hoe and water jar and walked back. It was already late, and if he did not leave, his father and brother would come to find him, and his grandmother would also be worried. The wasteland was a distance away from home, or else his mother would not have come to deliver lunch at noon. Walking on the rugged mountain road back home, although Zhang Xiaohua did not have any strength, he was in a good mood. The progress of the reclamation was not fast, and his father had already reminded him. If it could be done in a few days, the villagers would have already reclaimed the hillside. This was only the beginning, and in the future, they still had to carefully cultivate, sow seeds, water, and so on. There were many troublesome things. Suddenly, Xiaohua thought of something. Water. Yes, the hillside was so high, and it was so far from the village river. How should the water be watered, and there was no spring around? Why didn't he think of it earlier? What should he do? Thinking of this, Zhang Xiaohua's little face was immediately filled with worry, and he could not help but quicken his pace and run home. How could a child hide his emotions? When he walked into the village, the sky was already dark, and there were many children laughing and playing in the village. Seeing Xiaohua carrying a hoe, some familiar villagers stopped Xiaohua and asked him about the reclamation, and Xiaohua answered them one by one. It seemed that reclaiming the wasteland on the hillside was also a matter of concern to the villagers who did not have enough rations. However, Xiaohua was also very absent-minded. Everyone thought that he was tired, so they didn't ask in detail. Only then did Xiaohua rush home. Zhang Xiaohua's house was in the south of the village. From the perspective of feng shui, it was downwind and water. However, the area was not small. With Zhang Kai's efforts, there was actually a small courtyard. The walls of the small courtyard were not high. They were made of yellow mud and could be seen from the outside. From afar, Zhang Xiaohua could see her grandmother's figure leaning on a walking stick. As she was blind, her grandmother did not go out much. Now that she was leaning on the fence door, she must be worried about her youngest grandson. Hearing the approaching footsteps, Grandma smiled. Although she looked at Zhang Xiaohua blankly, she was unusually kind. Xiaohua, you're back. Are you tired today? Zhang Xiaohua ran a few steps, entered the door, put down the hoe and water jar, and held her grandmother's arm. She quickly replied, I'm not tired, Grandma. It's not like I haven't done farm work before. Grandma held Zhang Xiaohua's hand and said, Our Xiaohua is already an adult. Grandma forgot. Grandma's hand happened to touch Zhang Xiaohua's hand where the web between her thumb and forefinger was cracked. Zhang Xiaohua gasped in pain. Although she did not cry out, Grandma heard it and said loudly, Xiao Kai, quickly come and see the child. Zhang Xiaohua's father had actually just returned. He was washing in the courtyard when he heard his mother-in-law's voice. He looked carefully and said, It's okay, Mom. Xiaohua worked too hard and her hand was cracked. It will be fine in a few days. Grandma said, Do you want to go to Old Chin at the village entrance to get some medicine for the child? As they were talking, Gu Sufei came out of the house with something. She casually said to Zhang Xiaohua's grandmother, No need, Mom. Didn't Xiaohu use it last time? There's still some left. When Xiaohua sleeps tonight, apply some. It should be better tomorrow. Mom, quickly go back to the house. It's cold and the wind is blowing. I'll send food over to you later. Xiaohua, quickly help your grandmother back to the house. Zhang Xiaohua carefully helped her grandmother back to the house. She also put her worries about watering the plants to the back of her mind. After dinner, her parents were weaving baskets under the pea-sized oil lamp. Zhang Xiaohua and her brothers were also helping them. Zhang Kai then asked Zhang Xiaohua about the progress of the land reclamation. Zhang Xiaohua also said one by one. Zhang Kai said, You're really slow by yourself. When Xiaohu helps Xiao Long with the land on the other side of the river, he'll go over to help you. Zhang Xiaolong also said, Don't worry, Xiaohua. When we're done, Dad and I will go over to help. We'll finish before winter. Zhang Xiaohua said, Why am I in a hurry? Didn't Dad say that we have to be careful when reclaiming land? If we're slow, then so be it. When we plant the crops, they'll grow well. At this point, he thought of the matter of watering the plants. He quickly asked his father, Dad, I just remembered that the hillside is so high and there's no spring nearby. How are we going to water the crops in the future? Zhang Kai stopped what he was doing and said, It's hard for you to think of this. What do you think we should do? Zhang Xiaohua looked at her two brothers for help and said, We have to carry water to water the fields. The hillside is so far away and high. Carrying water won't work, right? Zhang Kai smiled and said, Xiaohua, what's behind our hillside? Zhang Xiaohua thought for a bit and said, Isn't there a very deep hole behind? Yes, it's right there. It's a small cave where 3 hills are squeezed together. We can dig a well there. Then we can make a small path from the well to the ground. Not only can we drink water, but we can also water the fields. Zhang Kai said confidently. Looks like you already have a plan. Gu Sufei smiled and praised her man. Then, Dad, when are we going to dig a well? Zhang Xiaohua asked impatiently. Wait until the ground is flat. Before winter, before the ground freezes, we'll ask the people in the neighboring villages who know how to dig wells to help us. Then we'll start. Zhang Kai finished speaking and began the work in his hands. After getting a satisfactory answer, Zhang Xiaohua was finally relieved. The family busied themselves with the work in their hands. After working for a while, Zhang Xiaohua was clearly exhausted. His eyes were blurred. Gu Sufei's heart ached for him, and she told him to go to sleep first. Zhang Xiaohua agreed, and woodenly walked over to the 3 brothers' Kong. He threw himself into the shabby quilt and fell into a deep sleep. He didn't even notice that his mother was applying medicine to his hand at night. Just like that, a busy day passed in a hurry. In the next few days, Zhang Xiaohua was patient. He only focused on leveling his own land and didn't worry about the problem of watering. That night, Zhang Xiaohua finished clearing the weeds and smashing the big clumps of dirt. He was ready to call it a day and head home. On the way home, Zhang Xiaohua could not hold it in any longer. He could not help but think to himself. Seeing that his slope had become a flat farmland, all that was left was a fine plow to sow the seeds. When would the well be dug? As soon as he rounded the slope, he saw several wooden shelves rising from the deep recess at the bottom of the slope. Zhang Xiaohua quickly ran over and looked. Sure enough, there was a circular platform at the bottom of the hole. On top of it was a circular wooden board. Around the wooden board were 6 long wooden sticks. The bottom of the wooden stick was deeply inserted into the soil. The top of the wooden stick was in the shape of a tower. Zhang Xiaohua was so happy that he almost jumped up. He jogged down the hill and came to the bottom of the wooden shelf. There was no one at the moment. They probably went to rest after setting up the shelf. Zhang Xiaohua patted and touched here and there. It was very strange. How could they dig a deep well with just these few shelves? Just as Zhang Xiaohua was feeling strange, someone called out to him from the top. "Xiaohua, where are you?" It was second brother Xiaohu. Xiaohua quickly replied, "I'm here. Second brother, come and see. We're ready to dig a well." Zhang Xiaohu also slipped down the hill. He pulled Zhang Xiaohua and said, "Okay, I know. Big brother and I helped get these things here in the afternoon. Big brother said it was a surprise for you, so he didn't tell you. Right now, Mom and Dad are waiting for you to come back. Let's go quickly." The two brothers jogged all the way back home. The dining table was already set up in the small house. Dad and Big brother were sitting at the table, but they didn't see anyone else that they didn't know. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but ask, "Dad, where are the people digging the well?" Zhang Kai smiled and said, "They all went back. Our family doesn't have much money. We promised them that they would only take care of lunch and not dinner. Also, our family members also need to help. This way we can give less money." Zhang Xiaohua agreed and went out to help her mother prepare dinner. After dinner, Zhang Kai assigned tasks to everyone in the family. Zhang Xiaohua and his brothers were naturally to help out. Xiaohua's mother was in charge of cooking and delivering food. Zhang Kai had to buy materials and find people to help out, etc. In short, other than Xiaohua's grandmother, the whole family had to help out. Of course, Grandma had to look after the house and feed the chickens. Early the next morning, Zhang Xiaohua woke up early and rushed her two brothers, who were on the Kong bed, to dig the well together. However, Zhang Xiaohua's mother insisted that they eat something before leaving. She said that Zhang Xiaohua's father had already gone. Moreover, they had agreed on the time. If they went early, there wouldn't be anyone. The three of them didn't know how to dig a well, so it would be useless even if they went. Zhang Xiaohua could only be patient and accompany them to eat breakfast. When they came out to the hillside, the sun had already risen. Seeing that there were already a few people working in the cave, Zhang Kai hurriedly called them over to help. They moved some of the stones and soil that they had dug out to the side. Thus, everyone started working in full swing. After being busy for a few days, Zhang Xiaohua found that digging a well was a very simple thing. They just needed to find a place and pull out a frame to dig down. However, finding a good place and ensuring that the dug place wouldn't collapse required experience. For example, this wooden frame was necessary. Otherwise, if people dug deeper and deeper, how could the soil be transported up from the ground and how could people come up? However, speaking of the location, Zhang Kai was also lucky. His family had discussed the location with him because it was close to the field. He didn't expect that they could dig out water. The master who dug the well looked all over the mountain and finally settled on this place. He said that there might be a spring below and he wanted to try digging. If they dug out sweet mountain spring water, it would be better to use it to water the field than to eat it. Hearing this, Zhang Kai ignored it. It was so far away from home. How could they carry water? Could they carry a few buckets of water from here every day to cook at home? The days of digging the well passed. The well was dug deeper and deeper, but there were also more and more difficulties. The progress was obviously slowing down. Because they were digging from the low-lying areas of a few hillsides, they would dig out a lot of stones from time to time. Fortunately, they weren't too big. Moreover, they didn't encounter the so-called large stones. Otherwise, they would have to give up before the well was dug. After a few more days, perhaps Zhang Kai's luck had reached its end. Digging the well finally encountered a big problem. This afternoon, Zhang Xiaohua went down to the well, picked up the hoe, and began to dig. Who knew that the first time she dug, she hit what seemed to be a hard stone. Zhang Xiaohua's hand was numb. According to her previous experience, Zhang Xiaohua chose a place further away from the previous one and dug again. Dang, it was obviously the same stone again. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but be a little flustered. She dug a few more times around the well. There were no exceptions. They were all stones. Zhang Xiaohua pulled on the rope tied around his waist and had someone pull him up. With a sullen face, he told his father what had happened. Zhang Kai and the well digger also went down to take a look. When they came up, they were silent. The well digger discussed with Zhang Kai and asked the others to go to the side to rest first. After lunch, they would come back to help. Finally, they confirmed whether it was a very large stone or a layer of stones. Seeing that everyone had dispersed and sat on the ground to rest, only Zhang Xiaohua looked at the well that wasn't dug well. She felt uneasy. She was really afraid that it was a layer of stones. If she couldn't dig further, her many days of hard work would be wasted. Perhaps she couldn't dig the well anymore. Zhang Xiaohua asked Zhang Xiaolong to put her back to the bottom of the well. She didn't give up and started digging again. Chapter 3. At this time, it was already past noon, and the sun was hanging high in the sky. But because the well had been dug deep, they couldn't see anything at the bottom of the well. They could only rely on the oil lamp that was brought down the well for illumination. Zhang Xiaohua's face couldn't see any determination under the flickering light. He thought for a moment, then raised the hoe and dug in a direction. Dang it. The sound continued. He changed a few more directions, but it was the same. What should he do? It seemed that he was really at the end of his rope. Zhang Xiaohua wanted to give up a little. It was better to go up first. After a while, he would expand the well and take a look. But his mother hadn't sent him food yet. Should he dig from the bottom first? Thinking about it, Zhang Xiaohua didn't stop. He continued to dig from the front, waist-deep place, and found a direction to dig. When he was digging, he suddenly heard a dang sound. Xiaohua couldn't help but be surprised. Another stone? But then he used the hoe again, and there was no more sound. Zhang Xiaohua was surprised, but he didn't think much about it. Maybe it was a small stone. As long as it wasn't a big stone, it was fine. After digging about a step forward, Zhang Xiaohua tried to dig down again. He hoped that he wouldn't hear any annoying sounds. In the end, he didn't have much comfort. The next step in this direction was also the same stone. Just as Zhang Xiaohua was about to take a break and change the direction, Zhang Xiaolong's voice came from above. Xiaohua, come up and eat. Mother has sent food. Zhang Xiaohua was pulled up from the well by his brother. Looking at Zhang Xiaohua's face, Zhang Xiaolong didn't ask any more. He just brought him food and watched him wolf it down. Then he comforted her, "It's okay, Xiaohua. If this place doesn't work, let's go somewhere else. The hillside is so big, there must be a place to dig a well." After eating, Zhang Xiaohua's complexion was clearly much better. She didn't seem to be gloomy anymore. Seeing the people digging the well going into the well, she smiled and said to Zhang Xiaolong, "I know, big brother. I'm going to take a look at the field. I'll come back later." Zhang Xiaolong patted Zhang Xiaohua's shoulder. Without saying anything, he took the empty basket and walked away. Zhang Xiaohua carried her hoe and walked up the hill. She came to the side of the field and put the hoe aside. She sat on the ground and looked at the field that couldn't be watered. She wondered if she should fetch water from the river in the future. When his eyes fell on the hoe, he noticed that there was a piece of mud on the hoe. It was probably brought up when he was digging the well. Zhang Xiaohua used her foot to rub the hoe, but it didn't come off. She picked up the hoe and used her hand to clean the mud. She discovered that the hoe was wrapped in a round object and was quite tightly stuck. Zhang Xiaohua tilted her head and thought about it. She guessed that when she was digging the well, the dang sound was probably the sound of the hoe digging into the ring. No wonder there was no sound. It was wrapped around the hoe. Zhang Xiaohua wanted to remove the ring from the hoe. She found a tree branch to pry it open and a rock to gently knock on it, but it didn't work. If she used all her strength to knock it against the rock, she might be able to remove it, but she couldn't guarantee that it wouldn't break. She couldn't bring this thing down the well to dig, right? Zhang Xiaohua felt a bit helpless. In the end, Zhang Xiaohua hardened her heart. She used half of her strength to lift the hoe and knock it against the rock. A dang sound was heard, but the ring didn't break and didn't come off the hoe. Zhang Xiaohua also used all her strength. After knocking it a few times, she finally removed it. That strange ring didn't break either. It seemed to be very sturdy. Zhang Xiaohua picked up the ring and used her clothes to wipe the mud off it. Only then did she see clearly that it was a bracelet. It was about 2 fingers wide, black, without any patterns and flat. She didn't know what material it was made of. Zhang Xiaohua was about to take a closer look when she heard Zhang Xiaolong's joyful voice from down the hill. "Xiaohua, come quickly. There's hope." When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she jumped up happily. She didn't have time to look at the bracelet she picked up. She put it in her arms, picked up the hoe, and slipped down the hill. She didn't notice that when she held the bracelet, it was light as a feather. When Zhang Xiaohua ran to the bottom of the hill, she saw the smiles on Zhang Xiaolong and Zhang Xiaohu's faces. She also saw Zhang Kai's slightly bitter face. After listening to Zhang Xiaolong, she knew that the bottom of the well wasn't a layer of stone. The stone wasn't too big. As long as the well was enlarged, the stone could be removed. However, the length of the expansion was at least 3 steps. When the well was bigger, the amount of digging would be bigger. Of course, the time would be longer and the money would be more. However, it was good that they didn't have to choose a new place, open a new well, or water the ground. It was a good result. Seeing the happy faces of the 3 children, only Zhang Kai was secretly worried. He hoped that such a stone wouldn't appear in the future. If it happened a few more times, the well wouldn't need to be dug anymore. The work in the afternoon was simple. The people digging the well measured the well according to the size of the stone, planned how to expand the well, and dug again. After such a small disturbance, everyone began to work in an orderly manner. When they returned home in the evening after dinner, before going to bed, Zhang Xiaohua didn't think about the bracelet in his arms. It was only when he took off his clothes that the bracelet fell out. However, after a tiring day, he was too sleepy. He didn't think too much about it. He casually stuffed it under his pillow and fell asleep. This night, everything in the Zhang family was the same as before. The oil lamps were extinguished early, and the wind blew the fence door and shook it. The withered grass on the yellow mud wall was also blown up and weakly waved. Only the moonlight from the sky shone through the window onto the shabby table and bedding. Everyone fell asleep. In the quiet night, there was only the sound of snoring. The only difference was Zhang Xiaohua. No, it should be Zhang Xiaohua's dream. His dream was no longer the streaky meat of the past, but full of flickering. It was like a kind of breathing, a radiance that stretched and relaxed, flashing and moving. On the morning of the first day, when the first ray of sunlight shone on Zhang Xiaohua's face, Zhang Xiaohua opened his eyes. He looked around doubtfully, but didn't see anything flickering. Only then did he know that all the flickering was a dream. He shook his head self-deprecatingly and prepared to go back to sleep. However, at this time, he found that listening to his 2 brothers snoring, he seemed to be unable to sleep. He was 100 times more energetic, so he had no choice but to get up and get dressed. When Zhang Xiaohua walked into the courtyard, he saw his mother cooking on the stove in the courtyard, so he went to the well in the corner to draw water to wash his face. Guosufei saw Zhang Xiaohua come out and was very puzzled, saying, "Xiaohua, why are you up so early? You were tired yesterday, so sleep a little more today. There's still a while to work." Zhang Xiaohua said as he drew water, "I'm not sleeping, mother. I'm not sleepy. Moreover, you see, I've already rested. I'm full of energy now. I can break that stone with a shovel." As he said this, he put down the basin and made a gesture of hoeing the ground. Guosufei said with a smile, Good Xiaohua. You've grown up. You're a pillar of the family just like your father." Zhang Xiaohua said with a red face, "Mother, I'm already so big. Don't call me good. It's so unpleasant to hear." While they were talking, Zhang Kai came back from outside with a bunch of vegetables in his hand, asking, "Who's grown up? Xiaohua, why are you up so early? Don't you want to sleep a little longer?" Then he handed the vegetables in his hand to Zhang Xiaohua's mother, saying, "Some of the grass in the vegetable garden has grown out. We'll have to pull it out when we have time. We've been busy with the well for the past few days, so don't let our vegetables go to waste." Guosufei took the vegetables and said, "Aren't you talking about your son? It's the first time he woke up so early. He'll be good at work in the future. Guo Fei continued to cook for the whole family, and Zhang Kai also went into the house. After Zhang Xiaohua finished washing his face, he had nothing to do, so he walked out of the courtyard. Although it was still early and winter was approaching, farmers couldn't stay idle. There were already many people walking around in the village. Some people were driving ducks and geese to the river, while others were gathering grass from the river to feed the chickens and pigs. There were also some people who had already carried hoes and were ready to go to the fields. Zhang Xiaohua walked on the small path in the village and felt that today was different from before. He couldn't tell what was different, but he felt that he was full of energy. There was a feeling of endless energy, or it could be said that every part of his body was full of energy. However, he didn't think too much about it. He just thought that he had slept well last night. When Zhang Xiaohua walked back home, everyone had already started to eat. He also hurriedly finished eating and followed his father and brother to continue digging the well. The next few days were peaceful. The surface of the well expanded, and they dug up the stones from the bottom of the well. The well also became deeper and deeper. When the piece was dug out, it looked quite flat and was cold to the touch. Zhang Xiaohua asked her two brothers to put it under the tree at the head of the field. They were going to use it as a bed to rest in between work during the summer. As for the bracelet, Zhang Xiaohua threw it behind his head and put it under the pillow. He had completely forgotten about it. However, his dream had already been replaced by streaky meat by Twinkle, but he didn't realize it. After a few more days, there was still no water in the well. At this time, Zhang Kai was a little worried. It was going to be winter soon, and the soil layer was about to freeze. Although the bottom of the well wouldn't freeze, it was not as smooth as before when they worked. That night, the family gathered together to do farm work after dinner. Zhang Kai frowned and discussed with Guo Fei that if the well didn't water in a few days, they would probably stop working. They would talk about it again when spring came. At this time, Guo Fei said, "Father, do you know that Mr. Wu's family in the neighboring village also bought a piece of land on the southern slope?" Zhang Kai said, "I don't know, but I heard that they are digging wells on the southern slope." Guo Fei said, "It's that well. It's dug by Mr. Wu's family. Like us, it's also used to water the fields. Today, when I went to the river to pull grass to feed the chickens, I met Guoquan's family at the entrance of the village. Didn't her sister-in-law marry Mr. Wu's brother? Guess what she said to me?" "What did she say? Is the well already filled with water?" Zhang Kai asked in surprise. "Didn't they fill it later than us? How can it be filled with water so soon? You think it's filled with water quickly? There's something worse than that." Guo Fei said angrily. "Hey, what's that?" Not only was Zhang Kai interested, but the three brothers were also curious. They dug a well and dug out a small broken box. Guo Fei continued, "When the box was dug out of the well, it was broken by a hoe, revealing the things inside. Although it was covered with mud, you could still see the pearls and agates inside. Why don't we have such good luck? We dug out a broken stone the size of a bed before they did." Just when the family was sighing over Mr. Wu's family's fortune, Zhang Xiaohua remembered that he had also dug out something from the well. He said excitedly, "Father, Mother, I also dug out a treasure from the well." Under the urging and eager gazes of his family, he took out the forgotten bracelet from under the bedding. Zhang Kai took it and examined it carefully under the oil lamp. He saw that it was a black, flat object made of an unknown material. Instead of calling it a bracelet, it would be more appropriate to call it a metal ring. He couldn't tell what it was, so he handed it to Guo Fei. Guo Fei took it, weighed it in her hand, and rubbed it with her fingers for a while. She said, "It's so light. It doesn't look like it's made of jade, and it doesn't have any patterns. It probably isn't jewelry. It looks like a child's toy. Xiaohua, take it and play with it." Zhang Xiaohua took it dispiritedly and handed it to his two brothers, as if it was his fault that they didn't dig out the pearls and agates. The two brothers turned the bracelet around in their hands and handed it to Zhang Xiaohua. It seemed that no one was interested in this ugly thing, so Xiaohua could only keep it in her arms. Guo Fei continued, "Sai, if it's really a good piece of jewelry, we can consider keeping it and use it as a betrothal gift when we matchmake your eldest brother at the beginning of spring. This time, the emotions of the whole family were ignited again. Zhang Xiaolong would be 20 years old at the beginning of spring. It was time for him to find a girl and settle down. Based on their own impressions, the family began to argue with Zhang Xiaolong one girl after another. When the oil lamp went out, the family still wanted to continue, but for the sake of digging the well and doing farm work the next day, they could only go to bed on the Kong bed. Before going to bed, Zhang Xiaohua took out the bracelet from her arms and was about to put it under the bedding again when she changed her mind. What Mr. Wu dug out from the ground was a treasure. Mine is also a treasure. I have to take good care of it. But where should I put it? He thought about it and put the bracelet on his wrist. What a coincidence. It was actually a good fit on his wrist. When he waved his arm, the bracelet didn't slide up or down. Zhang Xiaohua was secretly delighted. This bracelet was simply tailor-made for him. Until he fell asleep, he didn't think about how he could put it on his wrist if it fits so well on his wrist without any gaps. Not to mention that the streaky pork in his dreams had long disappeared. It only flashed endlessly in his mind. Chidian Chinese website www.chidian.com welcomes readers to visit and read. The latest, fastest, and hottest serial works are all at Chidian Originals. Chapter 4. For the next few days, Zhang Kai and his family were all busy digging wells. Fortunately, on the 6th day, the water that everyone had been looking forward to for a long time was finally dug out. Finally, they had completed a difficult task before winter, and everyone was relieved. Just as Zhang Kai was busy settling the wages of the well diggers, and Zhang Xiaolong and his two brothers were busy repairing the small path from the fields to the well platform, the gloomy winter clouds pressed down, and some salt bean-like snow fell from the sky. The farmers' love-hate winter day had finally arrived. After the first snow, the cold wind became bitterly cold, and the new year was not far away. Zhang Kai was very satisfied this year. He had gotten an extra piece of land for his family and dug a well. In the future, this land would not be afraid of drought, and if he took good care of it, it would be the main source of food for his family. Therefore, as the new year approached, he had already instructed Guosufei to prepare more New Year goods, so that the family could have a good New Year. His mother-in-law was getting old, and every New Year was a new year. Recently, his mother-in-law's health had been deteriorating, and she had been lying on the bed for half a day. He did not know if she could make it through the next New Year. Thinking of his parents and how well his father-in-law treated him, he could not hold back his burning desire, and looked forward to a good New Year. It was easy to buy the New Year goods for the farmers. The so-called rich meant that there were many styles, but the quantity was limited. In fact, in terms of style, most of them were mountain goods that were dried on a daily basis, and only a few things were bought by Zhang Kai from faraway markets. Because of his mother-in-law, Zhang Kai had bought some food that they had not seen before this year, which made the three brothers envious, and they wanted to try it early in the new year. Guosufei, in addition to being busy with New Year's matters, spent most of her time in the village looking for relatives. Sometimes, she would go to the neighboring villages to inquire. What she cared about was her eldest son's marriage. However, looking at her sometimes gloomy and sometimes happy face, it felt that things were not going as smoothly as expected. Time passed quickly as the Zhang family was busy, and the new year was finally around the corner. On the first day before the new year, just as everyone was sitting around the stove, talking about the next year's harvest, the situation in the field, and Zhang Xiaolong's future wife, suddenly he heard a commotion outside the village. It was a mess outside. Could it be that bandits have come to rob the village? Zhang Kai's mind immediately came up with an idea. However, that shouldn't be the case. The Guozhuang house was very small, and the Guo family was also a small family. Every family was very poor, and the bandits who lived in the nearby mountains never came to this desolate place. There shouldn't be any reason for them to come today. Although he thought so, Zhang Kai didn't dare to be careless. He called the three children, took the hose and other iron tools, and carefully walked out of the house. The Zhang family's wall was half a meter high, so they could see the situation in the village at a glance. In the village, many people were gathering and talking, and some were running. However, they all knew each other. Although everyone looked a little panicked, they could still see a little bit of joy and gloat. Zhang Kai was puzzled. He ordered the 3 children to return to the house and put the weapons back. He then went out to gather information. Of course, the 3 of them didn't want to be idle. They also followed him out and mingled with the young people of the same age. There were many people in the village, standing or sitting in 2s and 3s. They were all talking about the same thing. Zhang Kai walked to a group of old men who were smoking and talking loudly. He saw blacksmith Lu, who he was familiar with. He patted him on the shoulder and said, "Old Lu, what's going on? Why is it so messy?" Blacksmith Lu was smoking silently. When he saw that it was Zhang Kai who asked him a question, he knocked the cigarette that he had just finished smoking on the ground. He filled a new pot with new cigarettes from the tobacco pipe and carefully lit it. He took a deep breath and then said in a dull voice, "Old brother, do you know about One Eye who is 80 miles north of our village? The bandit who occupied Shichui Mountain?" Zhang Kai said, "I know, that's the biggest bandit within 100 miles of our village. How could I not know? However, they have always been active in the rich areas in the north. What's wrong? They ran over to our village?" Blacksmith Lu took another puff and said, "Yes, do you remember that some time ago Mr. Wu from Xinzhuang dug up a well and dug up a chest of treasures?" Zhang Kai suddenly realized, could it be? Zhang Kai didn't ask anymore. He already knew the reason. Wealth shouldn't be exposed. Such a conspicuous large sum of wealth was targeted by bandits. What good could there be? When Butchergua saw that Zhang Kai wasn't asking any more questions, he squeezed over and said mysteriously, not only that, Mr. Wu was still hoping for a fluke at first, saying that there was no such thing and refusing to admit it. One Eye chased Mr. Wu's family of dozens of people into the ancestral hall and sent people to turn Mr. Wu's house upside down. In the end, they found a pile of treasures in the cellar and at the bottom of the well. One Eye was furious that Mr. Wu had deceived him, so he burned down the Wu family's ancestral hall with a torch. Luckily, Xinzhuang is slightly better than us. They are all poor people, so One Eye didn't make things difficult for others. When these bandits left, they even made a fuss and told the villagers to be careful and not to report it to the authorities. Otherwise, they would bury everyone in Xinzhuang with them. Blacksmith Lu said, "Misfortune is a blessing in disguise." A few days ago, they thought that they had struck it rich. Now, their entire family has been wiped out. How tragic, Butchergua continued. They didn't wipe out their entire family. Mr. Wu's sister-in-law came back to our village yesterday to visit her parents. She didn't go back today and avoided a disaster. Didn't someone just report it? She just found out about the tragedy and sent people to investigate. Also, the person who reported it said that when the bandits left, they dragged a woman on a horse. They couldn't see her face clearly. She's probably Mr. Wu's daughter. The bandits took a fancy to her and took her up the mountain. Maybe she's the mistress of the village. Zhang Xiaohua and his brothers had been standing behind their father for a long time. When they heard what the villagers said, they felt a chill in their hearts for no reason. Usually, they didn't hear much about the evil deeds of bandits, but it was all just talk. They thought it was just a story. Now, it happened right in front of them. Mr. Wu was also someone that a few people had seen before. When they were young, he had even taught Zhang Xiaohua a few words. Now he was gone. He was burned to a crisp. Although they didn't see it with their own eyes, it still made them feel sad and afraid. Zhang Xiaohua unconsciously rubbed the bracelet on her left wrist. She secretly thought, "Fortunately, what I dug out wasn't a real treasure. Even if it was, I wouldn't tell anyone to avoid bringing disaster to myself and my family." An ordinary man's wealth is his own ruin. Such a bloody truth was deeply ingrained into the young man's heart. The 3 brothers told Zhang Kai that they wanted to go to Xinzhuang to see what happened, but Zhang Kai didn't agree. After all, it was almost the new year. If they encountered a bloody disaster, it wouldn't be good for their luck in the coming year. Moreover, the Wu family in Xinzhuang was now scorched earth. The tragic scene made people afraid. It was estimated that the people from the government should have already arrived there. If they went, it might cause a lot of trouble. As they talked, the people in the village also dispersed. After all, other people's days had come to an end, but their own lives still had to be lived. The truth of each person only sweeping the snow in front of their door, even farmers understood. The sky was dark, and the new year was coming. It was better to tidy up their mood and busy themselves with their own affairs. When Zhang Kai and the 3 children returned home, he saw his mother-in-law and Guosufei warming themselves around the fire. He told them about what happened in Xinzhuang. When the 2 heard, they turned pale with fright. The 2 of them prayed to the heavens, hoping that the souls of the dead would be reincarnated as soon as possible. They also hoped that their family would never encounter such a disaster. Until the sky was completely dark and the house was lit with oil lamps, Zhang Xiaohua's grandmother was still muttering, "Misfortune is a blessing in disguise, misfortune is a blessing in disguise." It was also the new year, but this year's Guizhuang house was far less lively than before. Under the curtain of the night, only children were playing with lanterns. Only they didn't know the dangers of the world and let their nature run wild. Most of the farmers were like Zhang Kai's family. After eating a sumptuous New Year's Eve dinner, tidying up the hard work of the past year, and looking forward to the sweet happiness of the new year, there was a trace of gloom in their hearts. When they thought about Mr. Wu's experience and thought about this world where the strong preyed on the weak, it was inevitable that they would have the idea that they were fish on the chopping block. Looking at the vast world, they didn't know how to protect their family's safety. The New Year's Eve, which was supposed to be lively and noisy, passed quietly just like that. She didn't know whether the dreams of the other villagers contained happiness, joy, harvest, and sweetness, but Zhang Xiaohua only had a twinkle in her eyes. That twinkle seemed to have a trace of clarity. The New Year's Eve for farmers was actually very simple. Other than the New Year's greetings, there was only the faraway market in Lu Town. Every year, starting from the 3rd day of the new year, there was a street in Lu Town where the 8 neighboring villages gathered and bustled. Everyone wore new clothes, brought their families, and brought a slightly full purse around their waists to feel the New Year's atmosphere. In Zhang Kai's family, except for Guosufei, who had to stay at home to take care of Zhang Xiaohua's grandmother, Zhang Kai brought his 3 children to the Lu Town market. Lu Town was south of the Guizhuang house and was about 30 li away from the Guizhuang house. There weren't many streets in Lu Town, so there wasn't much excitement to share on weekdays. It wasn't easy to catch up with the New Year's gathering. Everyone took out the energy they had accumulated for a year and squeezed out a street in Lu Town. This was a street facing north and south. It was relatively wide and seemed to be the main street of Lu Town. There were many shops on both sides of the street. No matter what kind of business they were doing, the business was very good. The doors were wide open and many people came in and out. The shop assistants stood inside and outside the shop, greeting the customers coming and going. Many peddlers picked their own small livelihood and placed it on the street. They kept shouting loudly to attract the people in front of them. Usually, if the shop assistants in the shop saw someone blocking the door, they would definitely greet them and drive them away. But today was an exception. They all came out to find a way to make a living. In order to win the first prize of the new year, they wouldn't be angry and hurt the harmony. They even wished each other good luck when they met. As a result, the street, which was not very spacious, became more crowded. Zhang Xiaohua, who came to the market with her father and brother, didn't even know where to look. Chapter 5. It was not the first time that Zhang Xiaohua had come to Lu Town's market. After all, it was the busiest time of the year. It was also the busiest place within a radius of dozens of miles. Since he could remember, he would come here every year. But in the past, his memory was full of sugar figurines, pastries, and other food. There was no other content, so he had never thought about what was crowded. Or perhaps, shuttling through the crowd was a kind of game that he found fun when he was young. But this time, when he stood at the north entrance of the street, looking at the crowded crowd, looking at the shops and stalls selling all kinds of goods, toys, and food, Zhang Xiaohua only wished that he had more eyes. Zhang Kai and his family followed the crowd from the north entrance of the street to the depths of the street. Every time they passed by a shop, they would squeeze in to take a look, whether it was selling silk, antiques, or even a pharmacy. They would stop for a moment. Zhang Xiaohua and his brothers were not only looking at the things being sold, but also at the crowd around them. In the small mountain village, they rarely saw so many people, especially beautiful and flamboyant girls, which attracted the young man's attention. Unfortunately, the three of them looked ordinary and dressed simply. At first glance, it was obvious that they lived in a mountain village. The girls' eyes slipped away from them, far from staring at people like they did. Occasionally, a girl felt their burning gaze and naturally shyly walked away. There were also some girls who looked back at them, which made the three of them blush unnaturally. Zhang Xiaohua only looked at things that were more fresh than when he was a child. Zhang Xiaolong and Zhang Xiaohu looked more at the future. Perhaps they wanted to meet a girl they liked and find their own happiness, but most of the girls did not pay much attention to their eyes, so they did not know what the two brothers were thinking. In the middle of the street, there was a big shop with a sign that said, Qian Family's Cloth Art. Seeing this, Zhang Kai's eyes lit up. Beckoning the three brothers over, he led the way in. There was a shop assistant standing at the door of the shop. When he saw Zhang Kai walk in, he hurriedly greeted him and said, "Sir, please come in. What would you like to see?" He didn't seem to notice Zhang Kai's uneasiness and the fact that his clothes were not brand new. After Zhang Kai walked into the fabric shop, he didn't go directly to the counter. Instead, he stood next to the door and nervously looked at the many male and female customers running around the shop. He didn't know what to do, and when he heard the shop assistant call out to him, he came back to his senses and awkwardly said, get some clothes for the children, and also buy some cloth for the children's mother." While they were talking, Zhang Xiaolong and his two brothers also came in. After all, they rarely entered such a big store. Just now, they were just looking around. Now that they really had to buy things, they didn't know what to say. They were a little timid. The shop assistant, on the other hand, didn't seem offended at all. He continued to smile as he welcomed them and said, "Then please come over here and take a look to see if there are any suitable fabrics." As he spoke, he brought them to a corner of the counter and showed them the fabrics on it. There were very few people at this corner of the counter. There were two groups of people who came first. One group was two young ladies who were looking down at the colors. The other group was a family of three with a child. They had also picked out the fabrics and were being wrapped up by the shop assistant. Aside from this corner of the counter, the rest of the place was filled with colorful satin and other fine fabrics. There were also many people in bright clothes surrounding the counter, commenting and picking. It seemed that the shop assistant also had good training and knew the needs of the customers. Looking at the clothes of Zhang Kai's family, he knew that what they needed was durable, not gaudy surfaces. Although the shop assistant was already very considerate and took Zhang Kai and the others to the right place, Zhang Kai still had a difficult expression on his face. Because in the past, when they came to this kind of cloth shop, it had always been the child's mother who made the decision. What to buy, what to buy, what to buy, what to buy, it didn't need Zhang Kai to worry. This time, because Zhang Kai was at home accompanying the child's grandmother, she let Zhang Kai come to buy cloth. Zhang Kai didn't think too much about it. When he arrived at the shop, he didn't know what to buy. Looking at the shop assistant's somewhat ugly expression, Zhang Xiaolong was quick-witted. He hurriedly walked forward and said to the shop assistant, "Let's take a look first. You should take care of the other customers first." After the shop assistant walked away, Zhang Kai couldn't help but say regretfully, "Look at my brain. When I left, I didn't ask your mother what kind of cloth to buy. Now it's great. Us big men have to go back empty-handed." Coincidentally, the taller of the two girls who had just been choosing cloth just happened to walk behind Zhang Xiaolong and pick up a piece of navy blue cloth on the counter. When she heard Zhang Kai's words, she walked back to her companion's side. Her eyes looked at Zhang Xiaolong again, seeming to discuss something. Then she walked over and said to Zhang Kai, "This uncle, I want to discuss something with you." Zhang Kai said in puzzlement, "What's the matter?" "Mississippi," the taller girl said, "Uncle, I was just about to pick out a piece of clothing for my brother, but he didn't come over. I see that his figure is similar to this big brother's. I wonder if I can ask him to help me try it on." "I heard you say that there's no cloth and no one to use as a reference. In return, how about my sister and I also give you a reference?" Zhang Kai was overjoyed at the unexpected good news. he slapped his thigh and said, "Good, good." Thus, Zhang Xiaolong acted as a clothes rack for a while and helped the two girls try on several pieces of clothing before buying something they were satisfied with. And Zhang Kai's wish was even easier to fulfill. The two girls helped them pick out cloth and color, making Zhang Kai and his family very satisfied. Even the shop assistant felt that the two girls had good taste. The only thing that made Zhang Xiaolong dissatisfied was that by the time the shop assistant finished wrapping the cloth and came out, the two girls had already gone far away. He still hadn't inquired about their names. Zhang Xiaolong gloomily took the cloth and followed Zhang Kai forward. Just as he was about to look at the farming tools in the roadside shops, he suddenly heard the sound of gongs and drums. When Zhang Xiaohua heard it, she said excitedly, "Dad, hurry. The big show is about to start. Let's go watch the show first." At the same time that Zhang Xiaohua called out to Zhang Kai, the crowd at the market also heard the sound of the gongs. Everyone rushed over. Zhang Kai also hurriedly called out to Xiaolong and Xiaohu and quickly walked over with the crowd. Lu Town had a custom for the new year. In the corner of the market, a large stage would be set up. Every day, a troupe would perform on it until the end of the market. For the farmers who had no entertainment, this was the highlight of the new year. It was no wonder that Xiaohua was so happy. When Zhang Kai and his family arrived at the stage, the big show on the stage had already begun. There were already 3 layers of people surrounding the stage. Fortunately, the stage was high enough that the people in front of it didn't block their line of sight. Although there were many people watching the show, they all held their breaths and listened attentively. It wasn't like the hustle and bustle of the shop just now. What was being played on the stage was a popular folk story. Everyone was watching with great interest. Zhang Xiaolong also gradually forgot about the regret he had just felt. Just as everyone was watching the show, there was a sudden noise on the other side of the stage. It was getting louder and louder. However, there were many people in between, so they couldn't hear it clearly. However, Zhang Xiaohua could hear that the voice of a girl was very familiar. Could it be someone he knew from his village? Coincidentally, there was a tree not far away. Zhang Xiaohua quickly climbed up and took a look. He really knew her. He said loudly to Zhang Xiaolong, "Big brother, it's the sister who just picked out clothes for us. She's in trouble." When Zhang Xiaolong heard this, he didn't have time to talk to Zhang Kai. He hurriedly pushed aside the people next to him, squeezed through the crowd, and walked to the other side of the stage. Zhang Kai also hurriedly pulled Zhang Xiaohu and called out to Zhang Xiaohua, who was coming down from the tree, to follow behind. When Zhang Xiaolong used a Herculean effort to squeeze through the crowd and arrived at the other side of the stage, the scene in front of him made his blood boil. The stage was built against a high wall. At this moment, there were 2 lonely little girls hugging each other under the high wall. Their faces were flushed red, and there were 2 small parcels beside them. Some clothes were spilled out from the parcels. They were probably the clothes they had just bought at the cloth store. In front of them stood 2 short, fat men holding folding fans. They were dressed in bright clothes, and they were mumbling and groping the 2 girls, forcing them to move back and forth under the high wall. Around the 2 fat men, there were 7 or 8 tall servants wearing coarse clothes. They separated the crowd of people who were watching the show. Among these fierce-looking servants, a few of them were smiling as they watched their young master's ugly behavior. A few of them were looking back at the crowd of people watching the show. From time to time, they would give a threatening look to prevent people from intruding. Although there were a few people who wanted to stand up and help the 2 bullied village girls, they were all frightened by the evil servants. They could only look over there with unwilling eyes. After Zhang Xiaolong rushed over and saw the situation, he was thinking about how to deal with it. However, he saw the tall village girl looking at him with a pitiful look for help. Although she wasn't looking at him, he couldn't help but want to rush over. At this time, Zhang Xiaolong was pulled back by the people behind him. When he looked back, it was his family. Zhang Kai grabbed his arm. Zhang Xiaolong was anxious and said, "Father," Zhang Kai said in a low voice, "Xiaolong, don't be impulsive. We can't beat them." Zhang Xiaolong said, "But if we don't help, those 2 girls will be bullied." Zhang Xiaohua also said, "Yes, father. Just now, that big sister also helped us." Zhang Kai said, Of course you can help, but you can't not help. Instead, you can't put yourself in trouble. Look over there, that person wearing black clothes and holding a broadsword. The three Zhang brothers followed their father's gaze and looked over. Sure enough, there was a big man wearing black clothes standing over there. He held a broadsword in his left hand and crossed his hands in front of his chest. He leaned against a tree and squinted his eyes as if he was asleep. It seems that he should be the two naked bodyguards. It seems that a large part of the reason why many people didn't dare to go forward was because of the broadsword in the bodyguard's hand. What should they do? Zhang Xiaolong was also a bit anxious. Just as Zhang Xiaolong was hesitating, the situation on the other side of the high wall became worse. The two short and fat young masters had already pulled the two village girls away and were using all their strength to drag them to the small alley at the corner of the high wall. Zhang Xiaolong couldn't hold back anymore. He forcefully shook off Zhang Kai's hand and quickly ran over. The group of evil servants also thought that the crowd next to them had been frightened by them. Seeing that a good show was about to begin, they all moved closer to the small alley. They didn't expect that someone would rush over at this time. Zhang Xiaolong rushed to the side of the two village girls. First, he reached out and grabbed the two girls' arms and pulled them to his side. The strength of the two short and fat young masters couldn't compare to him who worked in the fields all day long. They were pulled over in an instant. While they were stunned, Zhang Xiaolong loudly said, "What are you doing?" The two short and fat young masters saw that the prey in their hands had been taken away and their faces were very angry. The two of them looked at each other and one of them wearing orange clothes said, "We're not doing anything. Or you? What are you doing?" Zhang Xiaolong was stunned for a moment and then said, "I'm their older cousin. Why are you pulling them? Be careful, we'll go report you to the officials." The other person wearing black clothes said, "Report you to the officials? Okay, then let's go together. In Lu Town, your master, and the official. Your cousin just stepped on my shoes. I want her to pay for my shoes. I want to see if the official will report to you or me." At this time, Zhang Kai and the others also rushed over. Zhang Kai hurriedly bowed to the two people and said with a smile, "Two masters, please calm down. My two girls don't know any better. You see, they stepped on your shoes. We'll pay for it. Today is a good day to go to the market. You're a big man and have a big heart. This year, you'll be rewarded." The person wearing orange clothes said with a sly smile, "Well said. Seeing that you're a tactful old man, I, your master, will do a good deed and pay for my shoes." Zhang Kai was startled and carefully said, "Then may I ask how much copper coins should I pay you?" The person wearing orange clothes stretched out a palm. Zhang Kai let out a sigh of relief and said, "So it's 5 copper coins. I'll give it to you." Zhang Kai took out 5 copper coins and handed it over. The person wearing orange clothes didn't even look at the 5 copper coins in front of him and slapped them to the ground. He fiercely said, "You country bumpkin, you think these are your straw sandals? Your master's shoes are only worth 5 copper coins. Listen carefully, 5 taels of silver." Zhang Kai thought this was bad and immediately said with a smile, "Master, you must be joking. My family's annual food rations are only 3 taels of silver. Are your shoes worth that much?" The person wearing black clothes said, "You little old man, are you suspecting that we're lying?" At this time, the village girl behind Zhang Xiaolong had recovered. She poked her head out from behind Zhang Xiaolong and said, "Uncle, they're accusing us. We didn't step on them at all. We just came to watch the show. Before we even got close, they already surrounded us." Zhang Xiaolong also angrily said, "Father, they're obviously trying to blackmail us. Let's hurry up and take this girl to the authorities to sue them." The person wearing black clothes laughed loudly and said, "You bunch of bumpkins, you haven't seen the world. You don't even know your master Zhao and you're still talking about suing the authorities. Little ones, come and tell them what an official is." This Master Zhao waved his hand and the servants who were originally standing to the side watching the show immediately surrounded them. Zhang Kai saw that the situation wasn't good and said to Zhang Xiaohua, "You and these 2 girls find a chance to run away. We'll protect you." After he finished speaking, he took Zhang Xiaolong and Zhang Xiaohu to fight with the servants who surrounded them. Zhang Xiaohua also pulled the two girls and ran into the crowd watching the show. Zhang Kai, Zhang Xiaolong and Zhang Xiaohu, although they were strong laborers from the countryside and had some strength, they were slightly better than the servants in a one-on-one fight. However, a strong man couldn't withstand a large number of people. After a few rounds, they were thrown to the ground by several vicious servants. The servants' fists and feet rained down on them. The three of them were injured on their bodies and faces. Zhang Xiaohua and the two village girls were clever at first. They avoided several servants and were about to rush into the crowd, but they were unexpectedly blocked in front by the bodyguard. After several turns, they were unable to escape the bodyguard's figure. The bodyguard didn't make a move. He just blocked them and didn't let them go forward. When the servants caught up, he stood to the side and watched as Zhang Xiaohua and the two village girls were blocked by Zhang Kai and the others. When Zhang Xiaohua saw his father and brother being pressed to the ground and beaten, he anxiously rushed forward to save them. However, he was kicked in the chest and fell to the ground on his back. His body was covered in mud. When he was about to struggle to sit up, two more servants came and pressed him against the wall. They slapped him a few times and blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. These two servants saw that Zhang Xiaohua was still young, so they didn't make a move. They just pressed his body and didn't let him move. No matter how Zhang Xiaohua struggled, he couldn't break free from the two strong men's hands. Seeing his father and brothers being beaten under the vicious servants' fists and feet, his heart ached and tears flowed down in an instant. Chapter 6. When Zhang Xiaohua's helpless tears fell on the dust, the 13-year-old boy's heart was set off monstrous waves. He had no time to think about the evilness of the human heart and the ugliness of the world. He also had no time to blame the weakness of others and bystanders. He only had the hope of strength. He hoped that he could use his strength to protect his family so that they would not be bullied by these dog-like evildoers. The fists and kicks that fell on his family were like a hoe, planting a seed in his heart. It made his immature mind, and his originally weak heart, more and more substantial and firm. Two village girls cried and rushed over, wanting to pull away the servants who were beating Zhang Kai and the others. However, they were blocked by the two young masters and began to move their hands and feet. There were more onlookers than there were people watching the show, but they were all angry but did not dare to speak. The world was silent just like that. There were only the sounds of fists and kicks, the crying of the village girls, and the teasing of the libertine. The sun was already setting in the west. At this time, a gentle and pleasant female voice floated over from the high wall behind Zhang Xiaohua. A group of dogs that bully others because of their master's power. Senior brother, if you don't make a move, these people will be bitten by a group of dogs and be seriously injured. Then a man's voice sounded. Junior sister has a bodhisattva's heart. I'll go down and beat the dogs. As soon as the voice fell, a figure jumped down from the high wall and landed lightly behind the group of evil servants. This person did not make any movements, but he grabbed two people with both hands and casually threw them to the ground. Then, he kicked the other few people to the ground. Several evil servants fell on the dust and stopped moving. It was unknown whether they were dead or alive. Zhang Kai and his family of three were revealed. Their bodies were curled up, their faces were covered with blood and mud, and they were writhing in pain. At this time, everyone could clearly see that the person who landed on the scene was a young man around 20 years old. He was dressed like a scholar, wearing white clothes and holding a sword. As the scholar's gaze swept over Zhang Xiaohua, the two servants who were holding him down quickly let go and timidly stood to the side. Zhang Xiaohua cried as she rushed to her father and brother. She helped them sit up one by one and lowered her head to check on their injuries. The two young masters of the woman also stopped. When the two village girls ran over to check on the injuries of Zhang Xiaolong and the others, they did not dare to stop them. The bodyguard in black clothes walked forward and stared at the scholar for a long time. He cupped his hands and said, "May I ask which sect's disciple little brother is from?" Evil Tiger Gang's Xiao Quan Xing asks little brother's name. Unfortunately, the scholar did not pay attention to him. He turned and looked at the high wall and did not speak. At this time, Everyone noticed that there was a beautiful woman wearing a purple dress standing on the high wall. The woman was tall and her clothes fluttered in the wind, revealing the curves of her body. Unfortunately, her face was covered with a veil, making it impossible for people to see her true appearance. However, her high and mighty heroic bearing made it difficult for people to approach her. The woman in the purple dress jumped down from the high wall and walked with gentle steps to stand in front of the white-clothed scholar. She stood shoulder to shoulder and did not salute. Her pleasant voice rang out again. "Evil Tiger Gang, what a great reputation. Is it used to bully men and seize women? I don't know what Situ is doing." When Evil Tiger Gang's Zhao Quanxing first heard this, his expression was somewhat ugly. He even tightened his grip on his sword. However, when he heard the last part, his expression changed greatly. He had already let go of the sword in his hand. When the woman finished speaking, he immediately cupped his hands and saluted again. He respectfully said to the woman, "This one is a disciple of the gang's Black Tiger Hall. I have been ordered by the Hall Master to protect the young masters of the guard. Since this lady is acquainted with our gang master, please forgive me if I have offended you." "Acquainted with your gang master? Hehe, you sure know how to take advantage of the situation. We have been watching for a long time and have seen all of your actions. Although you have the responsibility of protecting him and did not make a move, it is hard to avoid suspicion that you are aiding the evildoers. Just the two dogheads that you are protecting, preying on the common people and raping women. I have long since found them an eyesore. If I don't teach them a lesson, it is hard to guarantee that they won't treat human lives like grass in the future." The white-clothed scholar said with a smile. When Zhao Quanxing heard this, he could not help but frown. He raised his voice and said, "Although the two of you are old acquaintances of my gang master, you have not revealed your identities and have instead interfered with my gang's affairs. Forgive me for not being able to comply." When the woman heard these words, she could not help but chuckle. She said, "You dog, you still dare to quibble. If I don't teach you a lesson, you won't be satisfied." When she finished speaking, she was about to step forward. The white-clothed scholar hurriedly stopped her and said in a low voice, "Junior sister, it is the new year. We are here to watch the fun. If we act rashly and see blood, it will be inauspicious. Moreover, we still have other matters to attend to. But you see how hateful these two dogheads are. Also, the villager who helped out just now was beaten so badly by them. If I don't get justice for them, my heart will not be at ease." The purple-clothed woman said resolutely and decisively. The white-clothed scholar pondered for a moment before saying, "Junior sister, you don't know much about the dangers of this world. Although we've punished these bullies today and helped them vent their anger, we won't be staying here for long. Once we leave, these bullies will find the villagers to vent their anger and maliciously retaliate. Then wouldn't our kindness not only fail to receive a good return, but also bring a terrible disaster to these innocent villagers?" The purple-clothed woman immediately narrowed her almond eyes and said sternly, "I don't believe that the bullies of this remote town have any power. If it doesn't work, I will tell my uncle and send troops to flatten this place." Her voice was loud and was heard by the bodyguard. His heart trembled. He knew that these words were probably not meant to scare him. He thought that if he did not handle this well, it would be difficult to guarantee that he would not be in trouble. Thus, he immediately stepped forward and asked in a warm voice, "Two Xiaoxia brothers, today this Xiao was wrong and I apologize again. I will go and persuade the two young masters. I would also like to ask the two of you to tell us your names so that we can bury the hatchet. After all, we are all trying to make a living in the Jianghu." The purple-clothed woman thought about her companion's words and felt that it made sense. When she heard Zhao Quanxing's words, she turned around and ignored him. She went over to Zhang Kai's side to check on their injuries. The white-clothed scholar then took out a small token and handed it to Zhao Quanxing. Zhao Quanxing took the token and looked at it carefully. It was as if he had been electrocuted. With an even more respectful attitude, he handed the token back to the white-clothed scholar with both hands. He turned around and ran over to the two short fat men who were at a loss. He whispered in their ears for a while. The two men's faces became even more unsightly and even somewhat pale. They trembled as they walked in front of the white-clothed scholar and bowed their heads in apology. The white-clothed scholar smiled and shook his head. The corner of his mouth slanted towards the purple-clothed woman. The two men could only walk back to the purple-clothed woman's side and continuously bow and beg for forgiveness. The purple-clothed woman also had a look of indifference and showed no signs of relenting. The two short fat men were also clever. Seeing that there was no effect, they immediately turned to Zhang Kai's family and the two village girls to beg for forgiveness. Farmers were naturally not very shrewd. The fat man only said a few words and the village girl and Zhang Kai's faces relaxed. Only Zhang Xiaohua kept a straight face and didn't say anything. There was only coldness on her face. The village girl looked at Zhang Kai and Zhang Kai nodded. Only then did she say to the purple-clothed woman, "This sister, you see." The purple-clothed woman said, "You don't need to look at my face. I'll listen to you." However, the death penalty for these two fat men can be forgiven, but punishment is inevitable. Have them pay 200 taels of silver to treat your injuries. As for you two dog-heads, if you dare to cause trouble for them again and I find out, be careful of your dog lives. When the two fat men heard this, they were overjoyed and immediately agreed. They even said that they wouldn't dare in the future. They took out a few banknotes from their pockets and didn't even count them. They quickly stuffed them into Zhang Kai's hands. Then, they didn't dare to leave. They anxiously looked at the purple-clothed woman and waited for her to say, "Scram." Only then did they dejectedly run back to the black-clothed bodyguard. When the white-robed scholar saw that they had returned, he didn't say anything. He walked over to the servants who had been kicked to the ground by him and gave each of them another kick. Only then did these people stand up and gather around the two fat men. When Zhao Quansheng saw that the matter had come to an end, he didn't dare to say anything else. He cupped his hands in salute to the two people and quickly left with the group of people. After they left, the surrounding people who were watching the show also came over. However, they still looked at the man and woman in awe, not daring to come closer. The white-clothed scholar walked over to Zhang Kai and the others and asked, "Can you still walk?" Zhang Kai replied, "Benefactor, we can walk." The white-clothed scholar said, "Then let's leave here first. Put away the banknotes in your hands. We'll talk when we're outside the town." After saying this, he and the purple-clothed woman left first. Zhang Xiaohua and the two village girls each supported one person and followed them out of Lu Town. Zhang Kai's group looked very strange and aroused everyone's curiosity. The man and woman in front were dressed gorgeously. The woman even wore a veil. The people behind them were obviously farmers. Moreover, 3 of them had bruises on their faces. Their clothes were tattered and there was still blood on their faces that hadn't been wiped clean. There was also a young man whose injuries weren't as serious as the others, but his cheeks were also swollen. The corner of his mouth was broken and his clothes were also dirty. Although everyone's eyes were staring at their backs, when they saw the swords in the young man and woman's hands, no one dared to stop them and ask questions. No one dared to follow them to see what was going on. There was a small stream half a li east of Lu Town. Zhang Kai and the others stopped here. The man and woman in luxurious clothes walked to a tree by the stream. Zhang Kai and the others walked to the stream and washed the blood and dirt off their faces and bodies. Fortunately, during the conflict just now, the servants didn't use their weapons. Although they were heavy-handed, Zhang Kai and the others didn't suffer any serious external injuries. Only Zhang Xiaolong's arm was stepped on many times. It should be broken. As for whether or not there were internal injuries, they didn't know. After Zhang Kai and his family finished cleaning, they brought the 2 village girls to the tree. Zhang Kai saluted and said, "Benefactor, we haven't asked for your great name. You saved our lives, please accept our respect." After saying this, he was about to kowtow and express his thanks. The white-clothed scholar hurriedly grabbed Zhang Kai's arm and said, "I'm ashamed. Don't call me benefactor. My name is Wenwenhai. You acted bravely for a just cause, disregarding your own life to save others. You should be the role model of our generation. Let me check your injuries first." After saying this, Wenwenhai grabbed Zhang Kai and the others' hands. He frowned and didn't say anything. Chapter 7. After when Wenhai checked everyone's pulse, he smiled and said, "Everyone's body is fine. There is some blood clot in your body and some external injuries are serious. I have some commonly used medicine here. It is good for treating bruises. When you go back, apply it externally and take it orally. Rest a lot and you will be fine." After he finished speaking, he took out some small bottles and handed them to Zhang Kai. He said, "This brother's arm is broken. I can't do anything about it. Here is some silver. Take it to see a doctor. It shouldn't be a big problem." After he finished speaking, he took out some scattered silver and handed it over. Zhang Kai quickly waved his hand and said, "I don't dare." At this time, Zhang Xiaohu, who had dark circles around his eyes, said, "Take it, father. We have received so much from our benefactor. We don't care about this little bit. It is also a token of our benefactor's appreciation. You should take it." Zhang Kai turned around and blamed his son. He said, "Just now we already took the silver from those people. How can we accept our benefactor's kindness?" After he finished speaking, he took out the banknotes that were just handed to him. After carefully counting, he was shocked. The banknotes were worth 10 taels each. There were actually 40 to 50 banknotes. He guessed that the short fatty was scared and didn't dare to count them. At this time, when Wenhai handed the silver over to Zhang Xiaohu and said, "This little brat has a forthright personality, I like him very much. Take it, that was someone else's compensation for you, this is mine." Zhang Kai saw that Zhang Xiaohu took the silver and didn't blame him. He told Wenhai about the banknotes. After all, it was a large sum of money. Zhang Kai didn't dare to privately deal with it. Moreover, he was afraid that those people would come back and cause trouble. The silver was a small matter, but his family's life was a big matter. When Wenhai looked at the large sum of money and smiled bitterly in his heart. In his mind, he would just let the short fatty pay a dozen or so taels of silver. However, he didn't know that his junior sister's nonsense had brought a lot of trouble to this family. He didn't dare to make a decision on his own, so he walked to the side and discussed it with his junior sister. Zhang Xiaohua accompanied his injured brother, but his heart was not calm at all. His cheeks and mouth were still burning with pain. Being bullied and almost losing his life had not affected him as much as seeing Wenhai descend from the sky and effortlessly deal with those vicious dogs. He had not yet recovered from the shock and hurt. His eyes were fixed on the sword in Wenhai's hand, and the seed in his heart seemed to be quietly sprouting. The two village girls stood behind Zhang Kai, not knowing what they could do to express their gratitude. They originally wanted to thank the purple-clothed woman, but seeing her unapproachable appearance, they didn't dare to approach and could only watch from afar. The result of Wenhai's discussion with his junior sister quickly came out. His junior sister took out a small token from her silk pouch and handed it to him. Wenhai didn't take it and said a few more words, but it seemed that he didn't convince her. He shook his head and reached out to take the token, then turned around and walked in front of Zhang Kai, saying, "Uncle, you should keep this large sum of money for yourself. Even if we take it away, if they chase after you, you won't have any way to return it to them. This is our sex keepsake, given to you by my junior sister. If they come to ask for the silver taels, you can just return the banknotes to them. The scattered silver taels I gave are enough for you to heal your injuries. But if they have other ideas, you can bring this keepsake to the Lotus Flower Escort Agency's outpost in town and look for their manager. Just say that the owner of the token asked you to look for them. If there's anything, just tell them." After she finished speaking, she handed the token in her hand to Zhang Kai. Zhang Kai carefully received this life-saving token and looked at it carefully. This was a black token about 3 inches in size and was very heavy to the touch. He didn't know what material it was made of. On the surface, there were 2 strangely drawn words that Zhang Kai didn't recognize. Beside the words, there were many strange patterns. On the back of the token, there was a word, Qing, that Zhang Kai could recognize. It should be the symbol of Wenhai's junior sister. Zhang Kai cautiously kept the token in his bosom and pinched it a little worriedly. After confirming the existence of the token, he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. When Wenhai waited for Zhang Kai to keep the token before she cupped her fists and said, "Everyone, we still have important matters to attend to. we won't be escorting you back to the village. In the future, if you have the opportunity to come to Pingyang City, please come and find me. We'll meet again someday." After she finished speaking, she didn't wait for Zhang Kai and the others to speak. She turned around and left with the woman in purple. Looking at their figures, they seemed normal, but in reality, they were very fast. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared from Zhang Kai and the others' sight. From the beginning to the end, the woman in purple didn't say a word to them when they left Lu Town. She also didn't take off her mask, so Zhang Kai and his family didn't even know her name or what she looked like. They only knew that she spoke very pleasantly. After the two people had walked far away, Zhang Kai and the others finally retracted their gazes. Zhang Xiaohua muttered, "Those two people ran so fast." Zhang Xiaohu said, "You don't know, right? Xiaohua, this is the legendary Qinggong." Zhang Xiaohua asked, "You've seen it before?" Zhang Xiaohu said, "I haven't seen it before. I guessed it. You didn't see that they didn't run, but they ran faster than running. They were also holding swords. I guess it's Qinggong." Zhang Xiaohua blinked and didn't ask any more questions. The two village girls walked over and bowed to Zhang Kai to express their gratitude. "Thank you, Uncle, for saving our lives. If it wasn't for Uncle..." As the two spoke, tears welled up in their eyes. They were still afraid of what had just happened. Zhang Kai waved his hand and said, "We're all farmers. It's only right that we help each other. Let's not talk too much. Let's leave this place first. After a long time, it's inevitable that people will come over. Which village are you from?" The taller village girl said, "We live in Baligo. My name is Lu Qian and this is my cousin Lu Yeye." Zhang Kai pondered for a moment and said, "Baligo is to the west of Lu Town. If we want to go back, we'll have to pass through the town. In this situation, it's better not to go into the town. If we go around the town, it's getting late and we probably won't be able to reach home before dark. Miss, we live in the Guizhuang house. It's to the north of the town. Why don't you stay with us for the night and we'll send you back tomorrow?" Lu Qian looked at the sky and said, "Then we'll have to trouble Uncle." Everyone got up. Taking advantage of the fact that it was still early, they dragged their injured bodies and hurried on their way. They wanted to reach home as soon as possible. 30 li was not a short distance for Zhang Kai and the rest who weren't injured. Moreover, they had to go around the east of Lu Town. Needless to say, the journey was difficult. By the time they reached the Guizhuang house, the sky was already dark. Zhang Kai originally wanted to go through the small bamboo forest next to the village so as not to attract other people's attention. However, looking at the sky, it wasn't necessary. In the dark, the Guizhuang house was no different from before. There were few people on the small path in the village. Occasionally, people would pass by, but they wouldn't pay too much attention to them. This made Zhang Kai, who had been worried that someone would see his family in a sorry state, heave a sigh of relief. It wasn't until he walked to the gate of his small courtyard and saw the figure of his child's mother under the light that he was completely relieved. When the group of people pushed open the gate and walked into the house, the scene in front of them shocked Guisufei, who had stood up when she heard the door open. She immediately went forward to support Zhang Kai and said anxiously, "Husband, what's going on?" She helped Zhang Kai to a chair and then hurried over to see the child. "Son, is everything okay?" Finally, she saw that there were two girls she didn't know. She didn't dare to ask and looked at Zhang Kai in confusion. Zhang Kai smiled bitterly and said, "The child's mother, it's nothing serious. I can't explain it clearly in a short time. This child is called Lu Qian and that one is called Lu Yeye. They are from Bali Valley. You and Xiaohua take Xiaolong to Old Qin to have his arm checked first. We'll talk about it when we come back. Oh right, let Xiaolong and Xiaohua wash their faces first. Just say that they fell down from a tree." Guisufei was puzzled. She quickly fetched hot water from outside for the two brothers to wash up. She wanted to get water for Zhang Kai and the others, but she was stopped by Zhang Kai and urged to treat the child's injury first. Lu Qian also wanted to follow, but she was stopped by Zhang Kai. Old Chen was an old veterinarian at the Guizhuang house. He had stayed at the Guizhuang house for a lifetime. His medical skills were not bad. Usually, not only did he treat animals, but many people also came to see him when they had a headache or fever. At this time, Old Chen stayed in his house and asked the child's mother to boil a pot of wine for him. Just as he was about to drink by himself, he heard someone anxiously knocking on his door. The voice was very loud. He guessed that someone in the village was sick. He had to put down the wine cup in his hand and get up to open the door. Old Chen opened the door and saw Guosufei and her children. He smiled and said, "Sister, why are you knocking on the door so late? Did the little guy eat too much and have diarrhea?" Guosufei carefully helped Xiaolong into the door and said awkwardly, "Boy's uncle, Xiaolong and the others were playing on Dongpa tonight. They accidentally fell down from a tree and fractured their arm. They just came back, so I hurried over. I'm sorry to disturb your rest." When Old Chen heard that Xiaolong's arm was fractured, his face immediately became serious and said, "What are you talking about, sister? It's a serious matter for the child. I have to get up no matter how late it is. Quickly come in and let me take a look." After saying that, Old Chen took them to a clean room specially used for patients. At this time, Old Chen's family also came in. Old Chen asked her to light the oil lamps and then asked Xiaolong to take off the sleeve of the injured arm. He carefully looked at it and used his hand to pinch here and there. He asked Xiaolong how he felt, and then he was obviously relieved. He said to Guosufei, "Sister, don't worry. It's not a big deal. It's just a fracture. Usually, cows and horses have more serious fractures. I can treat them. Xiang, leave this to me." Old Chen's family said worriedly, "Old man, you just drank. Are you okay?" Old Chen patted his chest. "I've been treating patients for most of my life. This little bit of wine is nothing. Moreover, I haven't started drinking yet. If you don't believe me, you can go take a look at my wine pot." In fact, Guosufei had already smelled the smell of wine on Old Chen. However, he was the only doctor in the village, so she could only rely on him. Now that she heard him say that he could take a look at the wine pot, she knew that he didn't drink too much. Only then did she feel relieved. Old Chen found a few very smooth pieces of wood and took out a porcelain jar from the cabinet. He opened the seal and immediately, a pungent smell of medicine came out from inside. Old Chen first used his hands to carefully help Xiaolong's broken arm align. Then he took out the ointment from the jar and applied it evenly on Xiaolong's arm. He wrapped it with a white cloth and finally fixed it with a wooden board. During the whole process, Xiaolong was in so much pain that he clenched his teeth and sweated profusely. Guosufei felt sorry for him and used a towel to wipe him. After doing all this, Old Chen washed his hands and said to Guosufei, "Sister, take the children home to rest. Come back in half a month to change the dressing. It takes 100 days to recover from a bone injury. He won't be able to use a hoe for a long time." Guosufei thanked him profusely and left some copper coins. Then she took the two children home. Chapter 8. At home, Zhang Kai and the others had already cleaned up. Everyone was sitting on the chairs waiting for them. Even the old lady who was lying on the bed had gotten up. Guosufei hurriedly asked Zhang Xiaolong to speak to her grandmother and explain that there was no big problem with her arm. Only then did the old lady relax and return to her room to rest. Zhang Kai saw that Zhang Xiaolong's arm was bandaged and entered the room. Knowing that there was no big problem, his heart relaxed. Only then did he feel that his body was full of pain and was extremely tired. Thus, he hurriedly asked Guosufei to arrange a place for the two girls to stay. This gave Guosufei a difficult problem. There weren't many rooms at home, and the three brothers were still squeezed into one room. Seeing Guosufei's difficult expression, Lu Qianji said, "Auntie, the two of us can just deal with it for one night. Don't be troubled." Guosufei thought about it and vacated her room for the two girls to stay with her. She chased Zhang Kai to the small room where Zhang Xiaolong and the others were staying. Zhang Xiaohua slept with her grandmother. Fortunately, there was a place for them to stay. Seeing that the two girls had entered the room to sleep, Zhang Kai took out the medicine that Wen Wenhai had given him and gave it to the three brothers. He also applied external medicine to Zhang Xiaohu and Zhang Xiaohua before letting the three brothers go to sleep. When the children returned to their room, Guosufei pulled Zhang Kai to ask about the situation. When Zhang Kai finished telling Guosufei everything that had happened during the day, Guosufei was so scared that her face turned ashen. Her body was trembling a little. She cried softly and said, "Father of the children, we almost couldn't see you again. We went to the market during the New Year and encountered this." Zhang Kai coaxed her and said, "It's okay. Mother of the children, isn't it all in the past? Hurry up and put away this token and the banknotes. When the sun rises, send the two girls back and give them half." Guosufei said, "There's so much money. We'll never see so much money in our lifetime. Why don't we just return it to them?" Zhang Kai said with a straight face, "We don't know who they are. Moreover, our benefactor is right. If we rashly return it, they might want our lives. The lives of farmers aren't worth anything. At that time, if they come to take it, just give it to them." Guosufei nodded in agreement. After the old couple finished talking, Zhang Kai took the medicine orally and asked Guosufei to apply the ointment for him. He then went to sleep in Zhang Xiao's place. Guosufei waited for Zhang Kai to lie down, then went to check on the three Xiaolong brothers. They had also fallen asleep, and only then did she return to her room. The two girls in the room were tired after the fright of the day, and fell asleep as soon as their heads touched the pillows. When Guosufei came in, they didn't know. Guosufei looked at the two girls' quiet faces and smiled kindly. Then she seemed to have thought of something and became pensive. #160. In the afternoon, after when Wenhai left the ointment for Zhang Kai and the others, he and his junior sister used Qinggong to walk for a while. Seeing that they were about to reach the main road, the two of them stopped. When Wenhai said, "Junior sister, we're about to reach the main road. We can't use Qinggong anymore. You see, we were busy saving people in the afternoon and left the horses in town. What should we do next?" His junior sister said softly, "We'll follow senior brother's arrangements." Her voice was still pleasant to hear, but also cold. When Wenhai smiled bitterly and pinched his nose as he said, "Junior martial sister, I see that you're usually indifferent to people and things, and you're always indifferent to everything. Why did you insist on me going to save someone in the afternoon? You even left your token behind. If those farmers used it to do bad things, what should we do? You won't be able to explain it to Master." His junior sister said, "I have to thank senior brother for this afternoon's matter. I'll report to Master about the token. I believe Master will understand." When Wenhai said, "Forget it. Let's go back and tell Master. I should have also taken action in the afternoon's matter. Eliminating the strong and helping the weak is the responsibility of us martial artists. It's because we have a mission. Otherwise, I would have already taken action and wouldn't have let Zhang Kai's family get hurt." His junior sister smiled and said, "I knew senior brother was a kind person and wouldn't leave them alone." When Wenhai said, "You little girl, you've been cold and warm-hearted since you were young. We grew up together, so how could I not know what you're thinking? However, it's still early. According to the waiter at the restaurant yesterday, there's still a long way to go. We can't delay any longer. Let's go get the horses and ride them." His junior sister still said, "I'll follow senior brother's arrangements." When Wenhai thought for a moment and said, "Junior sister, you're wearing a veil. You'll attract a lot of attention. Just wait here. I'll go to the inn in town to find a horse." After he finished speaking, he didn't wait for her to speak and walked towards Lu town. His junior sister didn't say, "I'll follow senior brother's arrangements." After about the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, they heard the sound of horse hooves coming from the main road. His junior sister raised her head and saw Wen Wenhai riding his horse over. When Wenhai's horse came to her side, the junior sister took the reins he threw to her. She stepped on the stirrups and jumped onto the horse. With a shake of the reins, she shot out like an arrow, leaving behind a trail of dust along the main road. When Wenhai shook his head and smiled. He also shook the reins and patted his horse to chase after her. Back to the evil tiger gangs Zhao Quansheng and the two short fat men, as well as a group of servants, dejectedly walked back. Along the way, many people saw them from a distance and quickly avoided them. There were also many people who saw that they weren't as arrogant as they were in the past and were endlessly puzzled. These two people were the sons of a wealthy merchant in Lu town. Normally, they bullied men and women and did many bad things. Today, The two families had invited all the important people in Lu Town to a banquet. Among these people were the evil tiger gang members. This was why the two of them had the time to sneak out and live freely. At this time, the banquet had already ended. Only the leader of the evil tiger gang and the wealthy merchant were left sitting in the garden. Seeing them leave in such a good mood and return disappointed, they found it strange and called them over to ask. Zhao Quansheng saw that the two fat men didn't dare to say anything, so he went over and reported one by one. When Zhao Quansheng said that the two of them had taken liberties with two village girls, the wealthy merchant glared at the two fat men and didn't say anything. When he said that a few farmers had actually come out to fight, the wealthy merchant frowned and said, "Where did these bumpkins come from? How dare they cause trouble?" Zhao Quansheng didn't reply and continued to report. When he said that two people from the Jianghu had come out, the wealthy merchant's expression changed. The fat on his face trembled as he looked at the leader of the evil tiger gang. This leader was his relative, so they had always been very close. Only then did the leader frown and didn't say anything. He even picked up his teacup and drank some tea. However, when Zhao Quansheng finished speaking and mentioned the token that the white-clothed scholar had taken out, his hand stopped and he nervously asked, "What is written on it?" Zhao Quansheng still had a frightened expression as he replied, "Misty." Clang! The leader's teacup fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. The wealthy merchant didn't care too much at first, but when he saw that his usually calm relative was scared to this extent, he couldn't help but be shocked. He quickly asked, "Third brother Zhao, what is a misty?" Third brother Zhao didn't reply. He stood up and walked in front of the two fat men. He raised his hand and slapped them. After a few slaps, their faces immediately swelled up and blood flowed out from the corners of their mouths. The two of them were so scared that they didn't dare to leave even if they wanted to. They could only call out, "Third uncle," and beg for mercy. Third brother Zhao angrily said, "You two prodigal things. Normally, you've done no lack of bad things like bullying men and taking women. Your father has already given you 4 concubines. Why aren't you satisfied? Is that village girl very pretty?" Seeing that the two of them didn't dare to speak, he forced them to say, "Speak, is she pretty?" The two of them said, "She's not very pretty. She just looks delicate and pretty. My heart itches." Third brother Zhao was so angry that he laughed and said, "If she's not pretty, then you should take liberties with her. Your hands are itchy too. I really should chop off your hands. Do you know how much trouble you've caused?" At this time, the wealthy merchant also knew the severity of the situation. He quickly walked forward and asked, "Third brother, is the trouble very big?" Third brother Zhao didn't answer his question. Instead, he narrowed his eyes and thought for a while. Suddenly, he said strangely, "Why did the two of you come back in one piece?" This question was very abrupt. The two fat men didn't know how to answer. Zhao Quansheng took over and said, "Hall master, it's like this." He then told him everything that had happened. That third brother Zhao sat back down in his chair. He closed his eyes and didn't speak again. It was as if he was thinking about something. One of the fat men who had just been beaten muttered heartlessly, "They said they would give us 200 taels of silver. I didn't really count before I gave them 500 taels of silver in banknotes. When I'm free tomorrow, I'll get someone to find out which bumpkin gave us this money. I'll make sure they return it." Third brother Zhao opened his eyes at this time. He angrily slammed the table and said loudly, "Bastard, you dare to go! You're not allowed to take this money back in the future. That's the money you used to buy your lives." The wealthy merchant came over and said, "Third brother, what are you talking about? You've confused your little brother. 500 taels of silver isn't much, but you still have to let me know the reason." Third brother Zhao smiled wryly and said, "Little brother, you know Wu Jianzhuang, right?" The wealthy merchant said puzzledly, "I know. Isn't that the big backer of your evil tiger gang? Of course I know this." Third brother Zhao continued, "Then you know the Lotus Flower Escort Agency." The wealthy merchant nodded and said he knew. Lotus Flower Escort Agency and Wu Jianzhuang, who is more powerful? Third brother Zhao asked. The wealthy merchant smiled and said, "Everyone's power is the same. There's no clear winner." Third brother Zhao smiled wryly and said, Little brother thinks too highly of us. Wu Jianzhuang is much weaker than the Lotus Flower Escort Agency. Everyone in the Jianghu knows this. You don't have to flatter us. But what does this Lotus Flower Escort Agency have to do with the Misty School? The wealthy merchant was a bit puzzled. The Lotus Flower Escort Agency is only a branch of the Misty School's outer hall. Third brother Zhao's words were like a huge stick that hit everyone's heads. The two short fat men were stunned. They never would have thought that taking liberties with two village girls who weren't pretty in this small Lu town would cause such a big problem. Luckily, when Zhao Quansheng asked them to pay the money, although they were extremely unwilling, they still obediently followed his orders. Otherwise, the two fat men wouldn't have dared to think any further. Number 160. Chapter 9. The merchant was also dumbfounded. He knew about the Lotus Escort Agency, but he didn't know exactly how powerful they were. However, there was one thing he was extremely clear about, and that was that if the Lotus Escort Agency wanted to wipe out his entire family, it would be as easy as flipping a hand. The merchant sat there thinking about the past and the future, his mind in a complete mess. At this time, Brother Zhao San's voice sounded, "Brother, there's no need to be so pessimistic. Since the two nephews have returned safely and have paid the compensation, and the people involved aren't from the Misty School, there shouldn't be any other big issues. However, brother, remember to stop here. Don't go looking for trouble with those people. If the people from the Misty School find out..." These words were like gospel. When the merchant heard this, he immediately woke up and said, "I know, Brother Zhao. I can't wait to send them another 5,000 taels of silver. Men, send the two young masters back to their courtyard and keep a close eye on them. Tell them not to come out for a month, no, 3 months. Don't lock them in the courtyard yet." Brother Zhao San stopped the merchant's orders. "Don't give them any medicine for their injuries. Just leave them like this, their faces are swollen. It's best to give them a few more beatings so that they can't walk normally. Tomorrow, let them eat and drink in restaurants and other places. Let people spread rumors that the two of them took liberties with a village girl and were taught a lesson by you." The merchant was overjoyed when he heard this and gave a thumbs up. "Brother Zhao, good idea. Men, give these two animals 10 beatings." The two pitiful short fat men didn't understand why being beaten was a good idea. They could only curse this cheap uncle in their hearts as they screamed for mercy. After Brother Zhao San finished these things, he turned to Zhao Quansheng and said, "Quansheng, you handled this matter very well. I'm extremely satisfied. I'll put in a good word for you in front of the gang leader." Zhao Quansheng was overjoyed when he heard this. "Isn't this all thanks to your daily teachings, Hall Master? Quansheng is willing to serve Hall Master wherever you go." The merchant also said, "Quansheng, it's all thanks to you today. I have to thank you properly. Men, bring me 1,000 taels of silver." Zhao Quansheng said, "No need to be polite. We should protect the young masters when we go out." Hall Master Zhao said, "Take it, you deserve it. If it weren't for you, even 10,000 taels of silver wouldn't have been enough." Only then did Zhao Quansheng politely accept the thin banknotes and put them in his pocket. At this time, Hall Master Zhao said, "Quansheng, hurry up and inform the gang leader that someone from the Misty School has appeared in Lu Town. I don't know why they're here at this time." After Zhao Quansheng agreed, he immediately bid farewell to the wealthy merchant and left. Not long after, he appeared in a remote courtyard and walked into a small hut. After a while, the window of the hut opened and a carrier pigeon flew out. It circled in the air for a moment before it determined the direction and flew towards a certain place. The pigeons flew very fast, but when the sky was almost dark, they arrived in front of a very hidden village. The pigeons circled in the air for a while before landing on the east side of the village. This was a very large manor. The surrounding walls weren't very high and there were many houses scattered around the walls. These houses were all in the same style. There weren't any tall buildings and they had gray walls and gray roofs. The house that the pigeon landed in was a house in the middle of the courtyard. After the pigeon landed, it was impossible to tell which house it was. The pigeon landed on the windowsill of the hut and made a coo-coo sound. A man dressed in martial arts clothes came out from the house and quickly walked to the windowsill. When the pigeon saw the man, it flew onto the man's arm and walked back and forth. The man took out a small tube from the pigeon's leg and then used his hand to rub the pigeon's back. He also took out a handful of food from his pocket and scattered it on the table next to the windowsill. When the pigeon saw this, it spread its wings and flew over, happily pecking at the food. The man took the small tube and quickly left the house. The man walked out of the house and passed through several corridors before arriving in front of a slightly larger house in the middle of the manor. He carefully knocked on the door and a hoarse and dignified voice came from inside. "Come in." The man carefully opened the door and walked into the house. The windows were open and the oil lamp wasn't lit. A thin figure stood in front of the window with his hands behind his back and looked outside. After the man bowed, he respectfully said, "Hall Master Situ, Hall Master Lu has news." The figure made a sound of surprise and said, "It's the new year. What kind of news would need to be sent by carrier pigeon? Quickly light the lamp." After the man lit the oil lamp, Hall Master Situ turned around. The man offered the small tube and Hall Master Situ took it. He took out the slip of paper and placed it on the oil lamp. His thin face couldn't help but frown as he muttered, "Why did they come to this remote and desolate place?" Then he placed the slip of paper on the flame and burned it. He glanced at the man and said, "You can go." The man bowed and quietly left, leaving Hall Master Situ sitting alone in the flickering flame of the lamp. Hall Master Situ knew that he had to let his gang leader know about this news. However, he didn't know where to go. This was because, as early as last night, gang leader had told him that he had something important to do today. When he went to find gang leader this morning, he couldn't find him. Just as Hall Master Situ was guessing gang leader Situ Ping's whereabouts, his cousin, who had always been competitive and not inferior to men, was riding a horse and following behind a young man in embroidered clothes. She whispered to the young man, "Ma, this is the tallest mountain in Lu Town. It's called Stone Man Peak. It got its name because there's a stone on the mountain that looks like a person. If we hurry, we'll be able to enter the mountain in the time it takes for half a stick of incense to burn. However, I don't know where young master wants to go, so I can't tell you the exact time." Ma turned his head and waved the horsewhip. He gently said, "Gang leader Situ, there's no need to be so reserved. Since Manor Head Wang recommended you as a guide, I don't treat you as an outsider. After we finish this matter, I'll definitely reward you. As for the specific location, I'll tell you when we enter the mountain." Situ Ping looked at Ma's gentle jade-like face and elegant eyebrows. She lowered her head and repeatedly said that she didn't dare. She knew that this Ma was someone with a great background. In the past, she had tried to act like a woman in front of Wu Jian village's Wang Hong. Perhaps it had been useful. However, this was the first time she had met this Ma. Moreover, he had been lukewarm the entire time. How could she dare to act like a woman? She just needed to be alert and cautious. Just like that, the two of them urged their horses forward in the twilight. On the other side of the mountain, Wen Wenhai and his junior martial sister were also galloping towards the mountain. Seeing that the mountain was nearing, Wen Wenhai slowly tightened the reins and slowed down the horse. He turned his head and said to his junior martial sister, "Junior martial sister, we're about to reach the mountain. I think we should eat something first and rest for a while. Once we've recovered our energy, we'll be able to deal with the situation in the mountain. Perhaps there'll be a tough battle ahead." The junior martial sister nodded in agreement. The two of them dismounted and rested. They took out the dry rations they had brought with them and ate. After they finished eating and drinking some water, the junior martial sister couldn't help but ask with some worry, "Senior martial brother, this mission is so important. Why didn't Master come personally? No matter what, he should have let the sect leader come. Why did he send the two of us? I really don't know what Master is thinking." When Wenhai took another sip of water, he looked around and said in a low voice, "Junior martial sister, Master naturally has his own reasons for making such arrangements. Before we set off, he told me in advance that in order to not attract the attention of other sects, the second-generation disciples of the various sects will be sent for this mission. Moreover, there will be an elder presiding over it for us. We'll know the specifics when the time comes. We'll just have to listen to the elders' arrangements. In any case, this is a lucrative mission. If nothing unexpected happens, we'll be able to complete it perfectly. When we return, Master will reward us handsomely. The junior marshal sister said, I originally thought that this place that I've never heard of would be a remote and desolate place with dangerous mountains and rivers. Along the way, there's actually a beautiful scenery. Although we haven't entered the mountain, it feels majestic. I wonder what it's like inside. It's a pity that we can't appreciate anything at night. Otherwise, this trip wouldn't have been in vain. When Wenhai slapped his forehead, junior marshal sister actually has such thoughts. Senior martial brother can't compare to you. Could this be the reason why my martial arts aren't as fast as yours? The junior martial sister didn't answer. He couldn't see her expression under the veil. When Wenhai said again, Junior martial sister, it's getting late. You should take off your veil. There's no one around here. The junior martial sister still didn't answer. When Wenhai was used to this and said to himself, all right, it seems like it's not too late. Let's get moving. We should be able to arrive at the scheduled time. After the evil tiger clan's chief Situ accompanied Brocade Clothes Man to the mountain, they galloped along for a while. Seeing that they were in front of a mountain, Ma stopped his horse and jumped off. Situ Ping also followed suit. Ma said, Chief Situ, do you know where Five Claw Peak is? Situ Ping said, of course I know. Five Claw Peak is one of the 5 small peaks next to Stoneman Peak. Because its shape is like a monkey's curved finger, it got its name. There's no road to go to that area. Horses can't go there, so we can only climb these mountains. After Ma heard this, he smiled and let go of his horse's reins. The horse went off on its own, looking for hay. Siduping also patted his own horse and put the reins on it. The horse also followed Ma's horse. It seemed like it was used to this. Ma said, then I'll have to trouble Chief Situ to lead the way. Situ Ping didn't stand on ceremony. He cupped his hands and used his qinggong to climb up the mountain. Situ Ping raised her dantian qi and ran for the time it took to burn 2 sticks of incense in one breath. Gradually, she felt a little weak and tired. At this time, she heard Ma's gentle voice in her ear, Chief Situ, it's still early now. We can get there at midnight. Why don't we take a few steps to recover our energy? What do you think? Situ Ping listened to this voice that was neither fast nor slow. He didn't seem to be out of breath at all. Without looking back, she knew that Ma was strolling behind her. She secretly sighed in her heart that the reputation of being a disciple of a famous sect was not in vain. She said, thank you for your kindness. Then she stopped and walked slowly on the small path on the mountain. Ma caught up with her from behind and walked side by side with her. He asked as they walked, Chief Situ, have you been to Five Claw Peak before? Siduping said, I've been here before. In the summer, the climate in the mountains is cool. We often come here to avoid the heat. The spring in Five Claw Peak is the best. We sometimes spend the night there. Ma nodded and then asked, is there anything strange about Five Claw Peak? Situ Ping said in surprise, you've been here before? How do you know that there's something strange about Five Claw Peak? Ma said with a smile, if I've been here before, I wouldn't have troubled Chief Situ to lead the way. Situ Ping said embarrassedly, I was just surprised. Please don't blame me. Speaking of Five Claw Peak, the scenery was not much different from Stoneman Peak. The spring water was indeed much sweeter than the other peaks. The strange place was the peak on the ring finger. Halfway up the mountain, there was a forest of wild jujubes. The area was frighteningly large. Very few people went there. Not many people who made a living in the mountains near Stoneman Peak could go there. However, according to the people who went there were man-eating beasts in the forest. Someone once went there to pick wild jujubes and never came out again. Therefore, very few people had the courage to go there. Moreover, wild jujubes were not something precious. Over time, people stopped coming there. 2 years ago, I brought my brothers here once. In order to scout the way, we let a wolf dog in. However, it did not come back. We did not dare to go too deep and went back after scouting the periphery. Siduping didn't hide anything from young Master Ma regarding the matters of the faction and spoke leisurely. Hearing this, young Master Ma was very satisfied and said, "It's good that Chief Situ knows about that place. In a moment, I'll have to trouble you to bring us there." Siduping was stunned. "You? Ma? Is there anyone else?" Ma said with a smile, "Of course there are others. However, we'll go to the first peak of Five Claw Peak first and wait for them there. Chief Situ, if you've rested enough, let's go." Siduping said, "Yes, young master. Please follow me." Chapter 10. It was very quiet in the mountains at night. There weren't many birds and insects chirping. Occasionally, a wolf howl would come from somewhere and cut through the darkness, showing the danger of the wilderness. It was a cloudy night. The moon had already hidden behind the clouds to sleep. Looking at the dark clouds in the sky, they didn't know when the tender crescent moon would show its head. Fortunately, Siduping and Ma were martial artists and had sharp eyesight. It was only because of this that they were able to walk in the dark night as if they were flying. When they came to the front of Five Claw Peak, there was a dead silence in front of them. They could only hear the wind blowing. Five Claw Peak's thumb mountain was a short and fat peak. In the dark night, they couldn't see how high it was. On the east side of the peak was a piece of flat land with a radius of 4 to 5 square meters. The terrain was very flat. The ground was full of fallen leaves and withered grass. When they stepped on it, there was a rustling sound. Ma looked around and said to Siduping, "It's here. Let's wait here." Then, passing through the withered grass on the flat land, he walked to the side of a protruding rock that was as big as a crouching cow. He flew up and sat down cross-legged. He didn't speak any more, as if he was meditating. Siduping also followed him to the side of the rock. However, she didn't jump on the rock. Instead, she stood leaning on the rock. Her hand held the sword at her waist. Her eyes looked around, observing this familiar place and this strange night. The wind blew like this. The two of them didn't seem to move. Just like this, the time to drink a cup of tea passed. Suddenly, Ma opened his eyes and looked in the direction of the forest in the north. Siduping felt Ma's movement and also turned to look at the forest. She listened carefully but didn't find anything. Just as she was surprised, she heard someone using qin gong to rush over from the forest in the north. Siduping couldn't help but sigh in her heart, as expected of a disciple of a famous sect. After a while, the people in the night arrived in front of them. It was Wenhai and his junior sister. It seemed that they had abandoned their horses at the foot of the mountain and ran up on foot. Wenhai didn't jump down from the tree in a hurry. He first looked down at the situation in the field. Then he called his junior sister to jump down from the treetop. He didn't greet the people in the field. Instead, he sat cross-legged under the tree and closed his eyes to meditate like Ma. His junior sister didn't stand. She took out a cushion from her backpack and placed it on the ground. She sat on the cushion. Looking at her appearance, she seemed to be resting. Ma also closed his eyes again, as if he didn't see anyone coming. Siduping could only stand there silently. After a while, they opened their eyes at the same time and looked at the path across the mountain. From the end of the path, there was a sound of footsteps. In this quiet wilderness where only the sound of the wind could be heard, these ordinary footsteps seemed a little strange. The footsteps were neither fast nor slow. They came from afar, but they still couldn't see the figure. The four of them were very expectant. They wanted to see who the person walking on the mountain path was. When the person came closer and saw clearly, everyone was even more surprised. It was actually two people walking side by side at the same pace. They had the same figure and the same movements. In the night, they couldn't see if they were wearing the same clothes or if they had the same face. However, looking at the two of them taking half the steps of a normal person, in fact, everyone already knew the answer in their hearts. They all thought at the same time, "So, the other family is them." The two of them walked to the side of the field and looked at the two groups of people in the field. They didn't make a sound and didn't enter the field again. They just stood there, straight and motionless. The four people in the field saw that the two of them were standing there motionless. Just like before, they closed their eyes and rested. It seemed that there was still someone who hadn't come. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, just when everyone was a little anxious, a voice suddenly descended from the sky. The cicadas in winter are mournful. Against the pavilion at night, the shower has just stopped. A figure suddenly appeared in the middle of the field. The 6 people present opened their eyes at the same time. They didn't seem to notice how this person came out, but they all called out at the same time. Yenming Jusher? They only saw that the person who had just arrived had a tall stature. The color of his clothes and headscarf couldn't be seen clearly, but his thin face and a few strands of beard below his chin made him look very familiar to the people of Jianghu. At this time, no one hesitated and stepped forward to say, Yenming Jusher, this junior greets you. Yenming Jusher used his right hand to stroke his beard and said with a smile, this old one has come late and made you all wait. You all aren't familiar with each other yet, right? Let's get to know each other first. In a while, we will need everyone to help each other out. The embroidered robed Ma cupped his fists to everyone and said, this one is Wan Jianfeng Ma Xiangyang. This is the evil tiger gang Sidu Ping. Then, afraid that everyone would misunderstand, he continued, the evil tiger gang is in this area. She is my subordinate and has come to be our guide. Yenming Jusher said with a smile, Xiaoxia Ma is truly considerate. Then I'll have to trouble Chief Situ. Situ Ping hurriedly saluted and said, to be able to serve everyone is my honor. Then, Wen Wenhai also cupped his fists and saluted, this one is Misty School's Wen Wenhai. This is my junior apprentice sister Xue Qing. Xue Qing finally took off the veil on her face, revealing her true face. However, no one could see it clearly in the dark. She didn't say anything and only cupped her fists towards everyone. Yenming Jusher said, I've long heard of Misty Wen's Xiaoxia Ma and Xue Qing's great names. Now that I've met you in person, you are truly worthy of your name. I am greatly comforted. Finally, the 2 people standing there silently cupped their fists and said to everyone, Tan family's Tan Wen. Tan Wu. Their rough voices came one after the other. Paired with their tall statures, they were quite imposing. After Yenming Jusher heard everyone introduce themselves, he put away the smile on his face and said, all right, I'll also introduce myself. I am Yenming Villa's Villa, Lord Yenming Jusher. From now on, everyone knows each other and knows who the 4 powers participating in tonight's matter are. Our operation will begin now. When you arrived, your sex elders must have already given you orders. Tonight, listen to everything I say. I've also reached an agreement with your sections. We'll talk about the specifics as we go. Now, take out your tokens. After saying this, Yenming Jusher took out a square-foot piece of leather. Ma Xiangyang, Wen Wenhai, and Tan Wen all took out similar items. Yenming Jusher handed the piece in his hand to Ma Xiangyang and said, put them together. The others also handed the leather to Ma Xiangyang. Yenming Jusher then took out a luminous pearl and handed it to Situ Ping, saying, I'll have to trouble sect leader Situ to take a look at this diagram. Thus, Situ Ping took the luminous pearl. Ma Xiangyang quickly put the 4 pieces of leather together under the light of the luminous pearl. Under the faint light of the luminous pearl, everyone could see that there was a map drawn on the leather. It was shaped like 5 fingers, and there was even a circle drawn in the middle of the ring finger. Situ Ping carefully looked at the map. He exchanged a glance with Ma Xiangyang and said to everyone, that's right, this map is the 5 clawed peaks. The 5 claws are all the same length. Look, this thumb is longer than the index finger, and the ring finger is the longest. When everyone heard this, they all looked at Yenming Jusher. Yenming Jusher said, that's good. Everyone, take back your things. Ma Xiangyang obeyed and returned the 4 pieces of leather to their rightful owners. Situ Ping also returned the luminous pearl to Yenming Jusher. Yenming Jusher took the luminous pearl and said, Sect leader Situ, do you know where the circle should be? Situ Ping said, that's a forest of jujubes. I've been there before. I once let a wolf dog go in, but it never came out. Yenming Jusher said, that's good. Then I'll have to trouble sect leader Situ to lead the way. Situ Ping said, alright. Then I'll have to ask everyone to follow me. After he finished speaking, he used his qinggong to move forward. Yenming Jusher looked at Ma Xiangyang, Wenhai, and Tanwen. They nodded in understanding and used their qinggong to follow in that order. Finally, Yanming Jusher looked around carefully. When he didn't find anything out of the ordinary, he got up and followed them like lightning. The only thing left was the lonely crouching ox rock. The wind blew past, blowing up the fallen leaves and withered grass. Soon, all traces of the rock were covered. It seemed that no one had ever come to such a remote place in the middle of the night. The group of 7 used their qinggong and was led by Situping. Like a gust of wind and lightning, they swept through the dark night. In about the time it took for 2 incense sticks to burn, they arrived at the previously mentioned Jujub's forest. At this time, the moon had already set in the west. Thick black clouds still covered the sky. It wouldn't be long before the sky brightened. In the darkness, the Jujub's forest couldn't be seen clearly. It was like a huge monster was entrenched in the middle of the mountain. Situping looked at the place he had been to before and felt a trace of unfamiliarity. So there was such a difference between day and night. He didn't know what secret this mysterious Jujub's forest was hiding. It actually made the 4 sects come all night and cooperate like this. Situping stopped and waited for everyone to arrive. He said to everyone, "Everyone, this is the Jujub's forest marked by the circle on the map. According to the height, it should be here." Yanming Jusher said, "It should be correct." After he finished speaking, he didn't go forward to look. Instead, he sat down on the ground. Seeing that everyone didn't understand, he smiled and said, "There's still some time before we make our move. Everyone rest for a while. I'll explain it to you. Otherwise, you'll still be confused. I can guarantee that nothing will happen if we go in." Thus, the other 6 people sat on the ground in a semicircle in front of Yanming Jusher. Yanming Jusher organized his thoughts and looked at the juniors sitting around him. He said, "Do you know the one-armed sword god from 300 years ago?" Everyone shook their heads. Yanming Jusher continued, "Before the 2nd of February last year, I didn't know. Your master also didn't know. On the 2nd day of February last year, my wife and I went to Yu City's Dragon God Temple to burn incense. In the Dragon God Temple, we actually met your Wan Jianfeng's Wan Qingjiu and his family. There was also your Misty School's O Peng, and the Tan family's Master Tan Yefeng. The 4 of us had been close friends for a long time, but we had never met. When we finally met, we all left our families and found a place to compare martial arts and drink. We brought our swords and wine to Wutong Mountain next to Yu City. We were prepared to spend a few days happily, but unexpectedly, just as we reached the top, we encountered a strange thing. Chapter 11. What strange thing? Xueqing and Situping asked at the same time. Yanming Jusher continued, "When the 4 of us took the food and wine to the top of the mountain, it was early in the morning and the sun had just risen. When we walked to the only large pine tree at the top of the mountain, we found that someone had already occupied that place. It was an old beggar with white hair and a beard. His face was ruddy and he had the appearance of a transcendent being. He was lying on a stone slab under the tree. When the rising sun shone on his body, he looked like an immortal." Yanming Jusher narrowed his eyes and spoke slowly, as if he was reminiscing about the past. But his clothes were ragged and he looked like a beggar. We thought that he was an elder of the beggar sect, but he didn't carry a cloth bag. When the old beggar saw us walk over, he asked, "Do you know martial arts?" We all nodded and said yes. Then he asked, "Do you have wine and meat?" We nodded and said yes. He then said, "Bring the wine and meat over." At that time, I was the one who was holding the wine and meat. I listened to him and gave him the wine and meat. When the old beggar saw the wine and meat, his eyes lit up. It was no less than the sunlight shining on his body. After the old beggar took our wine and meat, he didn't stand on ceremony and wolfed them down. Strangely enough, the 4 of us just watched him eat and drink until he finished all the wine and meat. Then he wiped his mouth and said, "Good wine and good meat, I didn't waste this life." Then he said to me, "You're not bad." Then he said to the other 3, "You're not bad either." Then, the old beggar took out a piece of leather from his bosom and tore it into 4 pieces with his bare hands. He casually tossed one piece to each of us. I took my piece and was about to open it when the old beggar took out a small book from his bosom and tossed it to me. After doing this, he lay back down on the stone and closed his eyes, ignoring us. The few of us were completely baffled. We opened the leather in our hands and carefully examined them. They are the ones you are holding now. However, we still couldn't figure it out. Thus, I opened the booklet again. The more I read, the more shocked and excited I became. When everyone saw my surprised expression, they knew that they had encountered something good. After I finished reading, your masters also read it. Only then did we know that we had picked up a treasure. According to the booklet, this piece of leather is a treasure map left behind by a swordsman named Chuda 300 years ago. The place where the treasure was hidden is the jujube forest in front of us. Chuda obtained this treasure map and found the sword manual and medicine here. After that, he lived here in seclusion and practiced his swordsmanship for more than 10 years before becoming a Jianghu swordsman. After Chuda achieved great success in his martial arts, he did not take the sword manual and medicine with him. He left them here, waiting for a fated person in the future. The booklet also explained how to use the leather and the time to enter the treasure trove. To tell the truth, at that time, the four of us were immediately excited and wanted to find this place to take the treasure. However, after looking at the time, we realized that we only had the opportunity to enter on the 15th day of the first month of each year. Only then did we calm down. Yenming Jusher looked at the gradually darkening sky and continued, "To tell the truth, when we saw this huge meat pie fall on our heads, we felt dizzy at first. When we woke up, we felt that it was too inconceivable. However, the old beggar was still lying on the stone. We were full of questions and waited for him to wake up. However, we soon discovered that the old beggar was not asleep. He was not breathing at all. The four of us checked and found that he had indeed passed away. Therefore, after we buried him, we discussed the matter of taking the treasure. However, because it was still early before the 15th day of the first month, we first returned to our respective sects to confirm the authenticity of this treasure. Moreover, we also planned the details of taking the treasure. We also agreed on the time and place of our next meeting. When we met again, we each took out the information we had collected. It turned out that 300 years ago, there was a one-armed swordsman in Jianghu. His name was very ordinary, called Chuda. His martial arts were very high and he was an upright person. At that time, there were often rumors about him eliminating evil and bringing peace to the people. However, no one knew his origin. Everyone tried their best to find out about his sect and origin, but it was to no avail. This Chuda never sparred with others because according to him, his sword moves were all killing moves. Once he made a move, there would be blood. He could not be used for sparring. Moreover, he was not famous. Although his martial arts were very high, no one could compare him to the top few in Jianghu. However, according to Taoist master Qing Mao, who was the first in martial arts at that time, he saw Chu Da's swordsmanship and felt that he could not compare to Chu Da's indomitable sword intent. After hearing this, the entire Jianghu was in an uproar and no one dared to provoke Chu Da. However, there were also people who wanted to be famous who pestered Chu Da and requested to spar with him. Chu Da avoided all of them. Until one day, Chu Da encountered the second most powerful swordsman in Jianghu who was massacring a village. In a fit of righteous indignation, he killed the swordsman with his sword. From then on, his ears were quiet and no one came to court death. Yunzhou, where Chu Da lived, was called Pingyang City 300 years ago. There was no one in Jianghu who dared to run amok there. Actually, what we coveted the most was not his martial arts. As for the sword manual, only the people from Wanjianfeng would covet it. Yenming Jusher said to Ma Xiangyang with a smile. We found out that this Chu Da actually lived to be 120 years old. The 6 young people who were listening to the story all cried out in surprise. The people of Jianghu could not be compared to ordinary people. They lived their lives on the edge of the blade. It was inevitable that they would have internal and external injuries. When they were young, it was not a big problem. However, in their later years, they would show their prowess. Unless they practiced profound internal strength, Very few people live to be 80 years old. Therefore, it was a miracle that this Chuda could live to be 120 years old. At this time, the eyes of the few young people lit up. They were all wondering if they could find life-prolonging medicine in the forest. In fact, most of them had the same attitude towards secret manuals. They could not even finish practicing their own martial arts, so how could they have the time to practice something from another sect? Besides, even if it was a top-notch martial art, didn't it still require time and sweat? Everyone present was not young and their meridians had already formed. If they were to practice it again, it would be half the result with twice the effort. Who would be stupid enough to do such a thing? They might as well get some personal benefits. If they could live for 10 more years, that would be 10 more years of enjoyment. They could also practice martial arts for 10 more years. Wouldn't that be better than any top-notch martial art? Of course, if there were any top-notch sword manuals, they could bring them back to their own sect. It could be considered as contributing to the development of the sect. When the time came, it would be recorded in the sect's ancient records and their names would go down in history. As they thought about it, it was as if they could see each other's saliva. Yenming Jusher saw the expressions of the young people and smiled. He continued, "Therefore, the four of us continued to discuss the matter of treasure hunting and obtaining. We also assigned different people to search for similar terrains according to our respective powers. The heavens do not disappoint those who work hard. As early as 2 months ago, we finally found this Stone Man Peak. Finally, according to our previous discussion, in order to not attract the attention of other sects, the few of them will stay in their own sects and only send out their outstanding second-generation disciples. Even the head disciple and other disciples who might attract the attention of others will not be sent out. Instead, I, the Manor Lord who has yet to establish a sect, will lead the people from each sect to obtain the treasure. Of course, you are all reliable members of the sect. You are all the confidants of the head disciple. Before coming, we all discussed that if you have any fortuitous encounters in the treasure trove, it will all belong to you." Immediately, everyone's expressions brightened. They finally understood why their master had sent them and not anyone else. Yenming Jusher continued, "Now, let's talk about the most important thing. The method of distribution of the treasure." When everyone heard this, their expressions froze as they listened attentively. If the treasure can be divided equally, then it will be divided equally. If there is a difference, then we will divide it equally. As for the rest, how do you think we should divide it? Everyone stared blankly, feeling astonished. This Yenming Jusher was quite humorous. Even at this point, he still wanted to test the younger generation. What a wonderful person. No wonder the masters allowed him to come alone and lead a group of juniors. When Wenhai rubbed his nose and said, "Sir, the people of Jianghu have their own rules. Let's use our fists and feet to decide." The rest of the people also agreed. Yenming Jusher mysteriously said, "Your masters also said the same thing." At first, they said it would be a sword competition, but other than Wan Jianfeng, the others disagreed. Then they said it would be a fist competition, but other than the Misty School, the others also disagreed. Then they said it would be a fist competition, and other than the Misty School, the others also disagreed. Then they said it would be a fist competition, and other than that, the others also disagreed. So they said it would be 3 rounds, with 2 wins out of 3 rounds. But how can you and I have such a good grasp of the martial arts competition? They were also worried about the safety of their disciples. Can you guess what method it was? Everyone looked at each other, staring at each other, unable to guess. Yenming Jusher fell to the side and encouraged. Finally, Xueqing's face was red as he stammered, "Say, Senior, could it be rock, paper, scissors?" After saying this, his face was so red that it was about to drip blood. Yenming Jusher said in surprise, "Heroine Xue's mind is so sharp, you actually guessed it correctly." Everyone was in an uproar, but only when Wenhai had a strange expression on his face. Everyone looked at the thin-faced, pedantic senior in front of them with reverence, and couldn't help but feel a sense of familiarity. They all muttered in their hearts, "Why is there such a big difference between people? Our master always has a straight face. How can he have such a demeanor?" Just as everyone was silently criticizing their master, they saw Scholar Yanming look at the rosy clouds on the horizon. He slapped his forehead and said, "Quick, go to the edge of the forest. Don't miss the time." After saying this, he ran to the edge of the forest. At this time, the sun from the east just happened to peek out from the other side of the mountain. A shadow flashed from the forest, passing between two trees at the edge of the forest and quickly retreating towards Stoneman Peak. Chapter 12. Zhang Xiaohua opened his eyes at the same time as the first ray of sunlight shone onto the wild jujube forest. Something flickered in his dark eyes for a moment before disappearing. Zhang Xiaohua did not immediately get up like usual. Instead, she laid down on the Kong bed and closed her eyes again. Her swollen cheeks were no longer as painful as last night. If she didn't purposely tug at the corners of her lips, it wouldn't hurt anymore. The wounds on her body were slowly healing, but what about the wounds in her heart? Zhang Xiaohua's mind flashed back to yesterday's events. Father's decision to stop Big Brother from going forward was not wrong. Father was also right. Things that were beyond one's ability, one should not interfere. Hot-blooded impulses could lead to death. It was not wrong for Big Brother to step forward and stop them. Although Miss Lu had only met us once, we had helped each other in the past. Even if she was a stranger, if he had not intervened when he saw her being dragged away and defiled by ugly people, this matter might have become a thorn in his heart that he would never be able to pull out in his lifetime. Thinking about the surrounding people, the numb, happy, and sympathetic faces, did they not want to go forward to stop them? Then, he thought of the two short fat men and a group of servants who were like vicious dogs. They were so arrogant and domineering that they did something outrageous in front of so many people. She thought about how her father and two elder brothers were trampled under the feet of others, and the miserable state of their fists and feet. Perhaps those evil servants didn't want to take their lives, but only took pleasure in it. They used their bodies as tools to amuse themselves, and let their blood ignite their excitement. However, what if those evil servants wanted to take their lives? Would they be able to escape? Thinking about it again, when Wen Hai and his martial sister had descended from the sky and easily knocked down that group of evil servants. The two of them didn't even tell Zhao Wanxing their names. With just a few moves of martial art and a token, they made those two arrogant bullies surrender without putting up a fight, obediently apologizing for their crimes. A thought flashed through his mind like lightning. Martial arts. I need strength, I need martial arts. This time, it was because he met Wen Hai and his junior sister. They were righteous and saved him. If they did not help, then his family would have been beaten up and their lives would have been in danger. It was not reliable to rely on anyone. He had to rely on himself. Only when he had strength would he have the ability to protect himself and his family. Only then would he have the strength to help others. Zhang Xiaohua's heart suddenly opened up. Since yesterday, his heart had been depressed, but in an instant, it opened up. Just like reclaiming wasteland with a goal, everything was easy to do. What he lacked was not perseverance, nor was he afraid of suffering, but a direction. With a direction, he could do his best to complete it. Zhang Xiaohua, who had decided on the direction of his career, did not want to stay in bed any longer. He got up from the bed and walked out of his grandmother's hut under the sunlight. The excited Zhang Xiaohua did not know that martial arts was not so easy to learn. Inheritance, talent, perseverance, opportunities, etc., but which youth did not have their own dreams? Which young man wasn't in his prime and full of vigor? Whether successful or unsuccessful, how could the impulsiveness of youth be different? It was just that everyone's path was different. Only when one walked, would they know whether it was right or wrong. Our Zhang Xiaohua was the same. Zhang Xiaohua walked out of the hut and saw his grandmother sitting at the door. He approached and said, "Grandma, it's still early. The wind outside is cold. Come in first." When it's almost noon, you can come out to bask in the sun. Hearing her grandson's voice, Grandma said lovingly, "Xiaohua, Grandma wants to breathe more of the outside air." Grandma wants to live one day at a time. I don't want to stay in the hut every day. But you, does your body still hurt? You should sleep more in bed. Zhang Xiaohua said cheerfully, Grandma, I'm fine. Touch my face, it's not swollen anymore. Zhang Xiaohua took Grandma's rough hand and put it on his face. Grandma touched it carefully and said with a smile, Okay, it's fine as long as you're fine. After that, she wiped her wet eyes with her sleeve. It seemed that she still cared for her youngest grandson. In the yard, Guosufei was busy at the stove outside the hut. Lu Qian and Lu Yeye were also helping. The two of them were very happy, but Lu Qian seemed a little shy. Yes, Zhang Xiaohua rubbed his eyes and looked carefully. Sure enough, Lu Qian's face was still red. Strange, what's going on? Zhang Xiaohua didn't know that Lu Qian and Lu Yeye woke up before dawn. Because they were not used to living in their own house, they couldn't sleep anymore. The two of them were afraid to disturb Guosufei's sleep, so they whispered together and talked about yesterday's matter. They were glad that they escaped the disaster. Lu Qian's heart was especially grateful to Zhang Xiaolong. If he didn't rush to stop them in time, they would be dragged into the alley by the two bullies. What's more, Zhang Xiaolong was unarmed and used his own body to protect the two weak women. Although he was seriously injured, he still had a determined expression on his face, which was deeply engraved in her heart. Not long after, Guosufei also woke up. She listened to the two girls talking and didn't disturb them. Seeing that the sky was about to brighten, she coughed a few times and sat up. The two girls also quickly got up. Last night, Guosufei was worried about her family's injuries, and the light was not good. She didn't look at the two girls carefully. Now, the sky was bright, and her family's injuries were stable. Only then did she have the opportunity to look at the two girls. The two girls were very beautiful, and their figures were good. Although they were different in height, each of them had their own merits. However, if they didn't have some beauty, how could they be molested in the street? Then, Zhang Xiaolong's mother began to ask all sorts of questions about the two girls. Only then did she know that there were only 3 people in Lu Qian's family, her father and brother. Her mother had died of illness a few years ago. Lu Qian's father was a teacher, and her brother was also a weak scholar. The family didn't have much land, and they only relied on teaching to make a living. They were respected in the village. Lu Yeye was Lu Qian's cousin. Her father was a butcher, and he was the brother of Lu Qian's father. They lived in the same village. Lu Yeye's parents were both alive, and she was the only daughter in the family. Yesterday, Lu Qian's family had guests. Her father and brother accompanied the guests, and Lu Yeye's father was busy with his own business. There was no one to accompany the two sisters to the market. The 3 women said a lot of intimate words. Guosufei even asked the 2 girls if they were engaged, and both of them said no. Lu Yeye didn't feel anything, but Lu Qian's face was red. Guosufei looked at Lu Qian's shy expression, and her heart was overjoyed. At dawn, Guosufei got up and was busy with breakfast. The 2 girls also came to help. After a while, Lu Qian's blush still hadn't faded, and Zhang Xiaohua saw a clue. Zhang Xiaohua walked to the front of the stove and said, "Good morning, 2 sisters." It was a very ordinary greeting, but Lu Qian heard the sensitive sister. She felt that her thoughts were read by this little brother, and her blush rose to her eyebrows. Lu Yeye happily replied, "Good morning, little brother." Zhang Xiaohua asked about her father and brother. Guosufei said that she had already gone to see them, and there were no changes. The injuries on the outside were lighter, and they hadn't recovered yet. She estimated that they would wake up in a while. While they were talking, Zhang Kai came out of the house. He was holding a wooden stick as a crutch, and he was limping. It seemed that his right leg wasn't very comfortable. Guosufei and Zhang Xiaohua went to greet him. Zhang Xiaohua brought a chair for her father in the courtyard, and let Zhang Kai sit on it. He stretched his waist, and his waist hurt so much that he gritted his teeth. Lu Qian and Lu Yeye went forward to greet him, and Zhang Kai repeatedly said that there was no need. Then he said, "The 2 girls didn't come back last night, so your family must be worried. The few of us men are injured, and Xiaohua alone can't escort you back. I think we should let Xiaohua and the people in the village bring a letter to your family, and let them come and pick you up." What do you think? Lu Qian and Lu Yeye looked at each other and nodded in agreement. After that, Zhang Kai and Zhang Xiaohua went to the village to find an adult man. The two of them went to Balagu together to bring a letter to Lu Qian and Lu Yeye's family. Balagu was southwest of the Guizhuang house, and it was quite far away. When Zhang Xiaohua and the others arrived at Balagu, it was already noon. Balagu was a village built in the middle of two mountains. From the outside, it looked very big and was 4 to 5 times the size of the Guizhuang house. There were many people in the village, and it was quite lively. When Zhang Xiaohua walked to the village entrance, someone had already seen her and asked her who she was looking for. Zhang Xiaohua said that she was looking for the teacher, Mr. Lu. That person's face was full of vigilance, but seeing that Zhang Xiaohua was dressed worse than him and the honest farmer behind her, he still asked, "Where are you from? Why are you looking for Mr. Lu?" Zhang Xiaohua said, "We are from the Guizhuang house, and we are here to bring Mr. Lu news of Sister Lu Qian and Sister Lu Yeye." That person was overjoyed when he heard this and said, "Is that so? Good, come with me quickly." After that, he brought Zhang Xiaohua and the others to a tidy little courtyard. Before they reached the door, they heard him shout loudly, "Mr. Lu, Butcher Lu, news of your daughter has arrived." They heard a loud and clear voice ring out from the courtyard, "Ah, the robbers have sent a letter. I want to see which bastard did this good deed." Following the voice was a burly man who was 2 heads taller than Zhang Xiaohua. He jumped out from the courtyard and grabbed Zhang Xiaohua's neck, saying, "Where are you robbers from?" Zhang Xiaohua was grabbed so tightly that she couldn't breathe properly, and her face was red. How could she speak? The man who came with Zhang Xiaohua and the person who led the way were about to dissuade them, but another person came out from the courtyard and said, "Second brother, you can't be so rash. Look at this little guy, his expression, his clothes. Does he look like a robber? Even if he is a robber, you should let him speak." That burly man smiled and let go of his hand, saying, "Big brother, aren't I just worried about my daughter's safety? Don't you know how to be anxious?" Zhang Xiaohua took a few deep breaths, and her complexion slowly returned to normal. Looking at the two people, she knew that the person behind was Lu Qian's father, Mr. Lu, and the one who grabbed her just now should be Lu Yeye's father, Butcher Lu. Chapter 13. Only then did the person who brought Zhang Xiaohua and the others speak up, joking with the large man, "Now Butcher Lu has hurt a good person again. This little brother came from the Guizhuang house and brought news of your family's daughter. This time, you must have scared him so much that he's forgotten." Butcher Lu, on the other hand, didn't mind the villager's words. He patted Zhang Xiaohua's shoulder, causing Zhang Xiaohua to grin and say, "I can tell with one look that this little brother is a broad-minded person. Why would he mind such a small joke?" Zhang Xiaohua looked at his large hand that was used to butcher pigs and thought, "I want to mind you, but you have to lend me some courage. Please don't be so intimate, my body has just recovered." She said, I wouldn't dare. This must be Sister Lu Yeye's father. Looking at your manly posture, it's just as Sister said." Then she added in her heart, "It's Xiongzi." When Butcher Lu heard this, he was overjoyed and his eyes narrowed. "Ye is still talking about this with you?" "That's right. Why did Yeye and Chanxian go to your Guizhuang house? Are they all right?" Only now did he remember to ask about his daughter. Mr. Lu spoke up from the side, "Let's talk inside first. Seeing how this little brother is neither too fast nor too slow, the 2 daughters should be fine." After he finished speaking, he led Zhang Xiaohua and his companions into the house. The villager who led the way said, "I won't go in, I'll go back first. I'll call Lu Kai back on the way." Mr. Lu nodded in thanks and watched the villager leave before inviting Zhang Xiaohua into the house for a chat. Zhang Xiaohua entered the courtyard and saw that it was about the same size as her own house. The layout was simple and there weren't as many farm tools as her own house. The stove didn't seem to be out in the open. There were about 2 rooms in front of her, and there were also 2 rooms on the left and right. She didn't know why Sister Lu had so many rooms when there were only 3 people in her house. When he walked into the front room, he realized the difference between them. There was a painting in the central room of the Lu family. It was a painting of an old scholar. In front of the painting, there were a few plates with fruits, snacks, and other things on them. It seemed that they were offering something. There was a painting on the left wall. It was snowing and there were a few people enjoying the snow in the pavilion. There were a few calligraphy pieces on the right wall. They looked like dragons flying and phoenixes flying. They should be written very well. It was a pity that Zhang Xiaohua didn't recognize them. There was a square table in front of him. On the table, there was a teapot, a few cups, and a plate of food. There were 2 chairs on the left and right of the table. There was also a small square table and a few chairs on both sides of the wall. On the table, there was a pot with flowers and plants. Looking at the 4 corners of the room, there were also a few plants in the pots. Zhang Xiaohua looked at the house that was completely different from her own house. She sighed in her heart. Is this the difference between a scholar and a farmer? Under her mother's management, her house was also quite clean and tidy. There were also paintings on the walls, but they were just some pictures of immortals. Her mother didn't seem to know how to arrange the flowers and plants in the pots. Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. She thought, if Sister Lu manages our house, what will it be like? As Zhang Xiaohua thought about it, he stood there. It wasn't that she was lost in her thoughts, but she didn't know where to sit. There were only a few chairs in her house. Usually she would stand. Teacher Lu's house had so many chairs. There must be something special about it. She didn't know how to sit. When Teacher Lu saw this, he quickly let Zhang Xiaohua and the others sit. Then, Butcher Lu poured a cup of tea for them and brought it over. Zhang Xiaohua took the teacup and gulped it down in one gulp. Then he smacked his lips. The water tasted really good. Butcher Lu saw that Zhang Xiaohua had finished drinking, so he quickly poured another cup for him. Zhang Xiaohua and Butcher Lu had been walking for the whole morning, so they were already thirsty. Since the water was so good, the 2 of them drank 4 cups of water in a row before stopping. Butcher Lu's eyes were the same as Teacher Lu's. They were filled with gratitude. Although Butcher Lu was a boorish person who slaughtered pigs, he also knew that they had rushed such a long distance and were so thirsty. It was all to tell his daughter that they were safe. Zhang Xiaohua finished drinking the water. Just as she was about to speak, she heard hurried footsteps from outside the house. Not long after, she saw a scholar who was about the same age and height as her elder brother running in. He must be Lu Qian's brother, Lu Kai. When Lu Kai entered the house, he first greeted Teacher Lu and Butcher Lu respectively. Then, Teacher Lu introduced Zhang Xiaohua and the others to Lu Kai. Lu Kai then greeted them with a bow. Zhang Xiaohua and Butcher Lu didn't know much about these things, so they followed suit and returned the greeting. Lu Kai then asked Teacher Lu, "How is my younger sister?" Zhang Xiaohua looked at the scholar who was obviously much thinner than her elder brother. She thought to herself, scholars really have a lot of etiquette. This brother Lu is really patient. He only asked after seeing such a polite greeting. If it was Butcher Lu, he would have asked directly. Oh right, he must be complaining that brother Lu came at the wrong time. She couldn't help but glance at Butcher Lu, who was also anxiously waiting for Zhang Xiaohua to speak. Sure enough, before Teacher Lu opened his mouth, Butcher Lu said, "You should drink some water first. This little brother hasn't said anything yet and you're already back." Lu Kai sat on the chair opposite Zhang Xiaohua. He wasn't in a hurry to drink the water. He looked at Zhang Xiaohua eagerly, waiting for him to speak. Zhang Xiaohua then introduced herself and told him everything that happened yesterday in detail. However, she was cautious and didn't say the specific amount of money that the 2 bullies lost. Zhang Xiaohua's eloquence wasn't very good and she spoke haltingly. However, even so, the 4 people in the room listened with fear and trepidation. Teacher Lu, Butcher Lu, and Lu Kai's faces were ashen. Butcher Lu even jumped up from his chair a few times, but he was gently stopped by Teacher Lu. When Zhang Xiaohua finished, Butcher Lu quickly poured 2 cups of water for Zhang Xiaohua. Everyone also drank a cup. It seemed that not only did the talking make the people's mouths dry, the listening people were also nervous. After drinking the water, Teacher Lu walked in front of Zhang Xiaohua and bowed deeply, saying, This old man would like to thank the virtuous father and son for saving my daughter. Lu Kai and Butcher Lu also quickly followed suit and bowed. Zhang Xiaohua was so scared that she jumped down from her chair. Why did they have to bow again? She hurriedly bowed in a nondescript manner. Zhang Xiaohua comforted them, saying, Sister Lu and the others are staying in our house. It's quite good. You don't have to worry. In fact, everyone knew that their loved ones were fine. However, they didn't see their loved ones get out of danger with their own eyes. After all, they felt uneasy. When everyone sat down again, Teacher Lu said, From the Guizhuang house to here, Xiaohua and the others walked the whole morning. I reckon that we won't be able to bring the children back today. How about this, second brother? You go back first and let sister-in-law prepare lunch. Let Xiaohua and the others eat first. After lunch, let Lu Kai and Xiaohua go to the Guizhuang house. Tomorrow, we'll go together to bring the children back. What do you think? Butcher Lu said, No, let me go first. I'm worried. We'll probably have to walk at night to the Guizhuang house later. It'll be safer if I follow. Teacher Lu thought about it and agreed. Lunch was eaten at Butcher Lu's house. Lu Qian wasn't there, so there was no one in Teacher Lu's house to cook. Lu Yeye's mother knew that her daughter was fine and had to entertain her family's benefactor. This meal was exceptionally sumptuous. Zhang Xiaohua, who was already hungry and hadn't eaten red braised pork for a long time, ate until her belly was full. After lunch, Zhang Xiaohua, Lu Qian, and Butcher Lu hurried back to the Guizhuang house. Not to mention for the time being, Wuzhua Peak, which was only a few hundred miles away from them, was another scene altogether. In the morning, when the shadow passed between the two jujube trees, Yanming Jusher flashed between the trees. Fortunately, he was a martial artist and his eyes were especially sharp. Otherwise, it would have been difficult to see clearly. The rest of the people still didn't understand what was going on. They could only stare blankly at Yanming Jusher's back. Yanming Jusher wasn't angry. He raised his voice and said, Why aren't you guys coming over? When everyone arrived between the two jujube trees, they looked carefully. It didn't seem to be any different from the other jujube trees. Yanming Jusher smiled and said, No need to look. It's definitely no different from the others. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so complicated. Now that we're preparing to enter the forest, take out the leather in your hands. The few of them took out the leather as instructed. Yanming Jusher said, Get some fresh blood and smear it on the top of the back of the leather. After he finished speaking, he took out a dagger, cut his finger, and smeared the blood on the leather. Ma Xiangyang, Wen Wenhai, and Tan Wen all did the same. A line of words appeared on the leather. It was, Go straight 10 trees, back 6 trees, left 6 trees, right 8 trees. Then, Yanming Jusher put together the words according to the diagram. It was the incantation for entering the forest. Go straight 10 trees, right 8 trees, back 6 trees, left 6 trees. Yanming Jusher said, All right, everyone get ready. We're preparing to enter the forest. I'll lead the way. Xiaoxia Ma and Xiaoxia Wen will follow behind. Heroine Shui and Chief Situ will be in the middle. The Tan brothers will bring up the rear. Everyone, keep your spirits up. Don't fall behind. The jujube forest in front of them was no longer as dark as it was at night. However, the bright sunlight still couldn't penetrate the dense forest. The dense fog in the forest made it difficult to see the end. The cold wind blew through the treetops, making a hoo-hoo sound, but it didn't seem to be able to blow away the light fog. Yanming Jusher took out his dagger and drew a mark on the two jujube trees. Then, he carefully walked through the two ordinary trees. The rest of the group followed the previously agreed-upon order, entering in a single file. The dense fog in the forest was very thick. One couldn't see more than 10 feet in front of them. It was also very humid. Not long after, everyone's clothes and shoes were soaked. In order to deal with unexpected danger, everyone held weapons in their hands. At this time, they all felt the cold. No one had entered the forest for many years. The ground was covered with a thick layer of fallen leaves and rotting jujubes. Walking on it was very difficult. The jujube tree's branches and leaves were very dense, intertwining with each other. Sometimes they even blocked the path. However, No one dared to rashly cut down the branches for fear of causing an accident. Just as everyone was moving forward in an orderly manner, they suddenly heard Sidu Ping's exclamation, "Look over there!" Chapter 14. When everyone followed Sidu Ping's horrified gaze, sure enough, there was a white skeleton leaning against a jujube tree about 4 or 5 feet away. The black eye sockets of the skeleton were staring in their direction. Everyone's hair immediately stood on end, and their hands holding their weapons tightened. Sidu Ping was a member of the Jianghu. She had seen a lot of bloody scenes, and had done a lot of things like murder and arson. How could she be scared by this little skeleton? However, this jujube forest's fierce reputation, this endless fog, and this cold weather. Everyone's heart was in their throats, so she couldn't help but cry out. Yenming Jusher and the others stopped and waited for a moment. They didn't see any movement from the skeleton, so everyone started walking again. Situ Ping was a bit embarrassed, but the others didn't blame her. In this kind of unknown environment, anyone would lose control of their emotions. Everyone was worried. As the group went deeper, the number of bones they encountered gradually increased. They even appeared many times along the path. No one dared to avoid them and directly cross them. There were many human skeletons, but there were even more of all kinds of animal skeletons. It seemed that the animals that had mistakenly entered the forest for so many years had innocently entered this strange and mysterious place. They were lost here and could no longer get out. They wandered around and exhausted their strength, and finally lay under the jujube tree, wailing and dying. Thinking of this, the group became even more cautious. Originally, they still had some thoughts of exploring the power of the forest, but now they completely dispelled it. These people were originally chosen by their elders to be careful and resolute in their actions. Naturally, they would not lose their lives in vain because of a little curiosity in their hearts. This forest seemed to be endless. After walking for a long time, it was still the same scene. If it weren't for the appearance of different bones, everyone would have thought that they had lost their way. Fortunately, they didn't encounter any danger along the way. Everyone calmed down and just wanted to continue moving forward, so that they could get out of this forest as soon as possible. After walking in silence for a long time, Sidu Ping, as a local tyrant, began to have some thoughts. Perhaps this was what it meant to be moved after a long period of silence. He didn't know what the others were thinking, but Situ Ping's thoughts were indeed moved. The Evil Tiger Gang was originally based in Lu Town, and this Stoneman Peak was also within the Evil Tiger Gang's sphere of influence. In the past, although he knew that the Five Claw Peak was a dangerous place, he didn't know the method to enter, and had been guarding this place for nothing. Now that he knew the method, wouldn't this place be his backyard in the future? However, the other 4 factions were much bigger than her. How were they going to deal with this secret area? Or would she be abandoned after she lost her use? Her life would be in danger. Just as Situ Ping was thinking about her gains and losses, her feet suddenly tripped on a tree root. Her body slanted to the right. Coincidentally, they were walking very close to the edge of 2 trees. As soon as Situ Ping felt her body lose balance, she immediately stopped thinking and kicked in the air. Her body nimbly stood upright and steadily landed on the ground. However, she had already deviated from the area between the 2 trees and was standing next to a jujube tree. This sudden change caused everyone else to stop. Yenming Jusher, Ma Xiangyang, and Wen Wenhai all turned around to look at Situ Ping. Ma Xiangyang looked at the tree root on the ground thoughtfully. Everyone waited for Situ Ping to come out from under the tree so they could continue walking together. However, at this moment, a strange scene occurred. Situ Ping turned around and looked around, her gaze sweeping past everyone as if she didn't see them. Situ Ping's face revealed a panicked expression as she looked around again. She raised her foot to walk, but then stopped, not daring to make any strange movements. Situ Ping's mouth moved as if she was calling out to everyone, but no one could hear her. Seeing this, Yenming Jusher hurriedly used telepathy to speak to Situ Ping. "Can you hear me? If you hear me, nod your head." At this moment, Situ Ping's face was filled with ecstasy. She kept nodding her head like a chick eating rice. Yenming Jusher said again, "Turn left and listen to my instructions. Stop when I tell you to." Situ Ping nodded again. Following Yenming Jusher's instructions, she faced everyone and then walked towards them. It was strange. Situ Ping only took 4 or 5 steps before she reached the place where everyone was standing. Situ Ping's eyes immediately lit up as she saw everyone. Yenming Jusher didn't ask why Situ Ping had fallen. Instead, he asked, "What did you see just now?" Situ Ping said with lingering fear, "When I stood up, I was still surrounded by jujube trees just like here. There was no difference, but I couldn't see any of you. No one responded when I shouted. If you hadn't spoken to me, I would have looked around again." Yenming Jusher frowned in thought. Ma Xiangyang smiled and said to Situ Ping, "Chief Situ, you must be careful where you walk. If you're not careful, you'll lose your life. Lu Town's great foundation will belong to someone else. Take care." Situ Ping bowed his head and said, "Ma, I understand. I'll be careful." Everyone became even more careful on the following road. They knew that this jungle wasn't as peaceful as it seemed on the surface. If something went wrong, they would be trapped and lose their lives here. Situ Ping didn't know, but everyone else did. Shouting was useless. They could only use telepathy. This profound martial art wasn't something that everyone knew. Instead of placing their hopes on others, it was better to be careful. After walking for the time it took for 4 or 5 incense sticks to burn, the number of bones on the road gradually decreased. The fog also thinned. They were about to reach the edge of the jungle. Sure enough, not long after, they saw light in the distance. Yenming Jusher led everyone in a roundabout way according to the mnemonic chant. They were even more careful. Nothing unexpected happened. The group of people followed the mnemonic chant and walked through the last tree safely out of the jungle. What greeted them was a world that left them dumbfounded. In front of them was a secret land that was as warm as spring. The area of this land wasn't very large. In the middle of the land was a large lake. White fog rose from the lake. Beside the lake was a small house made of stone. Around the house were several fields with plants. They couldn't see clearly from far away. Under the leadership of Yenming Jusher, everyone stepped into this place that no one had set foot in for hundreds of years. Yenming Jusher said to everyone, "According to the booklet, there is no danger in entering the secret land. Everyone can walk without worry. But for safety, I suggest that everyone move together. Follow me." Then he walked to the lake. When everyone walked to the lake, a burst of hot air hit their faces. They saw the lake water bubbling. Yenming Jusher squatted down and found a branch to put in the water. Seeing that there was nothing unusual, he thought about how to know the temperature of the lake water. Tan Wu came forward and took out an egg from his arms. He said embarrassedly, "I like to drink raw eggs. There are a few left over from yesterday. Now is the time to test the temperature of the water." Then he found a cloth bag and put it in the lake water. Not long after, he took out the egg. Sure enough, it was cooked. This time, everyone's idea of entering the water to explore was dispelled. It seemed that the temperature of this world was different from the outside. It should be related to the lake water. Everyone walked along the lake and walked to the only stone house. Presumably, the treasure that everyone was looking forward to should be inside. After walking half a circle around the lake, they did not see any animals and did not encounter any danger. Everyone's heart was relieved. It seemed that the master's will was not a lie. There were several medicinal fields around the stone house. Most of the medicinal herbs were unknown. After all, they were not pharmacists from the sect. Even the knowledgeable hermit Yenming could only recognize a few of them, such as tianqi, ginseng, atractylodes, golden sunflower, and so on. These medicinal herbs were very ordinary outside, but they were extremely precious here. There was no other reason. Any medicinal herb that had been here for 300 years or longer would be extremely precious. Not to mention the other unknown drugs, which should be something that had been lost over the years. Not to mention what was in the stone house. Even the herbs in the herb garden were priceless treasures to the various sections. So everyone looked at these precious things eagerly, thinking about how to bring them back. Yenming Jusher frowned and said to everyone, "I didn't think that there would be such precious medicinal herbs here. It's beyond our expectations. But I don't know how to bring them back. Let's go to the stone house first. When we come out, we'll think of a way. In any case, these medicinal herbs don't have legs and can't run away. Don't be greedy." Everyone smiled and followed Yenming Jusher to the stone house. This was a very simple stone house. It was so simple that it did not have a door. Yenming Jusher walked to the empty door, but did not dare to enter. Although it was clearly written in the book that there were no traps here, he still had to be vigilant. He thought for a moment, then picked up a stone from the ground and threw it in. Listening to it, there was only the sound of a stone falling to the ground. There was no other movement. Yenming Jusher then walked into the stone house with a dagger in his hand. The others also followed. The stone house looked small from the outside, but when everyone went inside, they discovered that the area was quite large. It was like a hall, not a room like everyone had imagined. And the hall was not covered in a thick layer of dust because no one had come here for a long time. On the contrary, because there was no door, the ventilation was good, and there was no smell of dust in the room. Directly across from the hall was a smooth wall. The top was empty, and it felt like there should have been a portrait or something on it in the past. Below the wall was a long table and a square table. There was an incense burner on the long table. Far from the incense burner, there was a small square flat box. And on the table below the long table, there were 4 square brocade boxes casually placed. They had an antique look, and the patterns were not present today. There were 3 chairs on both sides of the square table. They were all placed casually, and there was a praying mat on each chair. There was nothing on the wall on their left, and there was a hole in it. It was probably a window. On the wall on their right, there were 3 paintings hanging on the wall. One was a man in brocade clothes, holding a knife in his hand, and riding a horse forward. Another was a scholar in white clothes, with a sword hanging at his waist, strolling leisurely. The last painting was a woman, her face covered with a white veil. Her figure was graceful, and she held a long whip in her hand, standing beside a small bridge. The 3 paintings had been eroded by time, and were not very clear. Moreover, there were no words on the 3 paintings, so no one could understand what they meant. No one could tell if there was a one-armed swordsman in the painting. Chapter 15. After looking around the hall, everyone focused their eyes on the 4 brocade boxes on the table and the flat box on the long table. Everyone knew in their hearts that inside was the key point of this mission, the treasure of this secret plane. However, everyone was still muttering in their hearts. Coincidentally, there were 4 forces this time, and there were 4 brocade boxes on the table. If there were 3 forces that had just been lost in the dense forest, would there be 1 less brocade box on the table? These were just people's thoughts. These boxes had been here for more than 300 years. How could they suddenly disappear and suddenly appear? Yenming Jusher was still cautious. He walked to the front of the square table and did not rush to take the box. Instead, he carefully looked around. He knocked on the chair with the dagger first, and even knocked the futon to the ground. Then he used the dagger to put the brocade boxes in place, but he did not find any movement. Finally, he was still not at ease. He walked to the right side of the wall, opened the 3 paintings and looked at them separately. He did not find any mechanism. Then he walked to the front of the table and said to everyone, "It seems that there should be no mechanism here. What do you think?" The rest of the people had been following layman Yenming ever since they entered the secret place. When they arrived at the hall, they didn't dare to move. There had been a saying about tactical deployments in Jianghu since ancient times, but in their era, tactical deployments had long become legends. Occasionally, there would be a few tactical deployments, but they were just verbal deployments. They had never heard of any tactical deployments that could trap someone with just a few bamboo slips and a few stones, let alone a big tactical deployments made by the whole wild Jujube forest sect. This was obviously a big move made hundreds of years ago. Everyone's mind had long been shocked. They had already listened to their master's instructions and followed layman Yenming's lead. At this time, when he asked for a suggestion, how could they have any objection? They all nodded and agreed. Yenming Jusher was very satisfied with their attitude. He said with a smile, Jianghu is an unpredictable place. It's good to be more careful. You should also look around and see if there are other mechanisms in the hall. It's also your opportunity. If you get something, it's your benefit. Everyone looked at each other for a few moments before dispersing in all directions to check out the various corners of the hall. Everyone muttered in their hearts. Could it be that Yenming Jusher was planning something? Change the brocade box? However, the hall was only so big. Everyone could see clearly what he was doing, so they weren't afraid that he would do anything. Perhaps Senior really has the heart to take care of this Junior. In any case, it's not a big deal to look around. Sure enough, it didn't take long for everyone to finish searching, but they didn't find anything. It seemed that the treasures in the hall were these few boxes. When Yenming Jusher saw that everyone had returned, he cleared his throat and said, according to the previous agreement, each of our 4 factions can choose a brocade box. Although clan leader Situ is from the evil tiger gang, you should belong to Xiaoxia Ma's faction and not be considered an independent faction. Does clan leader Situ have any objections? Situ Ping said calmly, I have no objections. That's right. How could she dare to have any objections? Her life was saved by someone else. Yenming Jusher continued, then next we'll follow the order of the leather hides. Follow the map from left to right and from top to bottom to pick the boxes. What we get will be up to fate. After saying this, he stood at the side of the table. According to the order, the Misty School should be the first to pick a box. When Wenhai thought for a moment and walked forward, he carefully looked at the 4 brocade boxes on the table. They were exactly the same, without any differences. There was a layer of dust on top of them. It seemed that they had been there for a long time. After thinking for a moment, he picked up the second box from left to right. Just as he was about to open it to see what was inside, he was stopped by Yenming Jusher. Yenming Jusher said, there must be treasures inside the box. Since there are 4 of them, everyone will have a harvest. However, the items in each box may not be the same. There may be differences. If we all know what is inside each box, we will inevitably have greedy hearts. Why don't we all keep it a secret and don't open the boxes until we leave this place? Everyone nodded in agreement. When Wenhai also put away the brocade boxes and returned them to their original positions. Next was Wan Jianfeng, Ma Xiangyang, then Yenming Jusher, and finally Tan Wu went forward to pick up the last brocade box. No one looked at it and put it away. After the distribution, everyone's eyes turned to the long table. There was a flat box in the distance. Yenming Jusher walked to the end of the long table and picked up the box. It was hard to the touch and seemed to be quite heavy. Looking at it carefully, it seemed to be carved out of a piece of stone. It seemed to be used to store treasures. However, for some reason, it was not placed on the table, but on the other end of the long table. Yenming Jusher walked to the table and passed the box around for everyone to see. Afterwards, he placed it on the table and quietly looked at everyone. He said, there is only this box left in this room. There is no way to divide it equally. How about we do as we said before and use rock, paper, scissors to decide who gets it? Everyone looked at each other and felt a burst of absurdity. The people of Jianghu actually wanted to use a child's game to decide such an important matter. However, if they did not use this gentle method, who would hold back when facing such a coveted treasure? It was hard to say who would benefit in the end. Everyone could only acquiesce. At this time, Ma Xiangyang said, Senior, I have a suggestion. Yenming Jusher said with an unsurprised expression, Xiaoxia Ma, feel free to speak. Ma Xiangyang said, I have no objections to rock, paper, scissors. However, I have a small request. That is, I hope that no matter who gets this box, they will open it and let us see what is inside. What does everyone think? Yenming Jusher pondered for a moment and nodded in agreement. Everyone else also had the same thought. They would naturally know what their treasure was when they returned. The thing inside the box might not be theirs, so they had to take a look. Afterwards, Yenming Jushi arranged the order of the game. It was still the same order as before. Misty School and Wan Jianfeng were in one group, while Yenming Jushi and the Tan family were in the other group. Misty Schools when Wenhai and Xueqing looked at each other. When Wenhai nodded toward Xueqing and smiled encouragingly. At the same time, his face was full of awkwardness. Xueqing walked forward and arrived in front of the square table. Only she knew why her senior brother's face was full of awkwardness. Anyone who had played this game with her since they were young and lost to her since they were young would feel embarrassed whenever this game was mentioned. Wan Jianfeng only had Ma Xiangyang, so he naturally wouldn't feel at ease letting Sidu Ping come up. In fact, even if he felt at ease letting Sidu Ping play, clan leader Situ wouldn't dare. Seeing the two come forward, Yenming Jushi said, "The rules of rock paper scissors are, scissors beats paper, paper beats rock, and rock beats scissors. Before we start, we need to cover everyone's eyes with a scarf. When I count 1, 2, 3, everyone will play at the same time. Then, take off the scarf and we will see who wins." Xueqing and Ma Xiangyang both used scissors in the first round. In the second round, Xueqing still used scissors while Ma Xiangyang used paper. When Ma Xiangyang took off his scarf for the second time, he retreated regretfully. Yenming Jushi and Tan Wen's contest was decided in one round. Yenming Jushi used rock while Tan Wen used scissors. The last round was the most crucial one. At this time, Yenming Jushi thought for a moment and signaled Sidu Ping to cover himself and Xueqing with a scarf. After Ma Xiangyang counted to 3, he took out scissors. After taking off his scarf, he found that Xueqing also used scissors, so he covered her with another scarf. After thinking for a moment, he took out scissors again after counting to 3. In the end, he found that his opponent was still scissors and couldn't help but be stunned. In fact, Yenming Jushi had his own selfish reasons for proposing this game. Since young, he was proficient in all kinds of miscellaneous skills, such as rock, paper, scissors, gambling, and so on. He won more than he lost, but because he dabbled too much in martial arts, he couldn't reach the peak. At this crucial moment, he found that his opponent was also an expert. His heart trembled and he paid more attention to this game. However, in the third round, Yenming Jushi used paper, while Xueqing still used scissors. There were no changes. When Yenming Jushi pulled off his scarf, he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. He was trapped in a cocoon of his own making. If he had known earlier, it would have been better to compete in martial arts. Not to mention Xueqing's face full of excitement, when Wenhai took the box and was about to open it when Yenming Jushi stopped him. "Wait, put it on the table and use your sword to pry it open from a distance to prevent any traps." When Wenhai put it on the table and used the tip of his sword to pry the box a few times, but he couldn't find the position of the lid. This time, he picked up the box again and looked at it carefully. Only then did he realize that the box was actually sealed. Then he tried to pry it open, but it didn't open. The other people also didn't open it. Yenming Jushi also picked up his dagger and tried to pry the box open, but it didn't work. In the end, he completely ignored Wenhai's gaze and actually used his dagger to cut the box open, but it didn't leave any marks on the box. He finally understood why this box was thrown far away at the end of the long table. He casually returned it to Wenhai. Wenhai also carefully put the box in his arms. Seeing that there was nothing left in the hall, everyone's thoughts had already flown to the medicinal garden. Yenming Jushi brought everyone to the medicinal garden and said to everyone, "Everyone didn't prepare enough, and I don't know if we can take more herbs. I suggest that we first take some mature herbs that can be preserved. There will be 4 sets, 1 for each sect. As for the seeds and other transplants, we'll discuss it again. What do you all think?" Everyone had no objections, and then led by Yenming Jushi, they collected one by one. All the mature herbs were collected in 4 sets and packed into 4 packages, 1 for each sect. In the end, Scholar Yenming said to everyone, "Since no one has any luck, we can only comfort ourselves here in the herb garden. What we brought just now was for our respective sections. Next, each of us is only allowed to pick 3 mature herbs for ourselves." After that, Yenming Jushi took everyone to walk around each medicinal field again and collected the herbs according to their own requirements. In fact, everyone knew about the same herbs. Most of them were hundreds of years old: ginseng, Polygonum multiflorum, tianqi, shanjing, and other things. After finishing this, the light in the secret plane was already a little dim. It was estimated that it should be early noon outside. Everyone only then remembered the matter of going out. It took a long time to come in, so if they went out, wouldn't it be late at night? Yenming Jusher smiled and comforted everyone. Go out, just find a place to go. As long as you go straight, you can go out. However, looking at the sky, it's time to go, let's leave. After that, everyone picked up their packages and followed Yenming Jusher to find 2 jujube trees in the middle of the jujube forest and went straight away. Everyone didn't know that when they just walked into the jujube forest, a snake-like monster's head poked out of the high-temperature lake. It looked at the place where they were going for a moment, and then retracted into the water, leaving only the ripples on the lake. Chapter 16. By the time everyone left the Swanjujube forest, the sky had already darkened. Their journey back had been uneventful. The moment they walked out of the dense forest, both Yenming Jusher and the remaining juniors let out a long sigh of relief. This harmonious treasure-hunting trip had finally come to a successful conclusion. They had kept their lives, completed their mission, and obtained the treasure. This treasure naturally belonged to them. When they thought of this, everyone's hearts felt warm, as if a cat was tickling their hearts. Yenming Jusher looked at everyone with a smile and said, "Everyone Shaoxia, please be patient. Wait for us to reach the thumb peak before we speak in detail." Then he led everyone back to the thumb peak. Everyone sat in a circle in front of the crouching ox rock. Yenming Jusher opened his mouth and said, "Everyone Shaoxia, this mission has been successfully completed. Next, please bring back the results of this mission to your respective schools and sections. In addition, please bring back my greetings. Everyone, please raise your heads on the 2nd of February and meet at the same old place. Let us drink and chat merrily." After he finished speaking, he didn't seem to want to stay any longer. Without waiting for anyone to speak, he cupped his hands and used his qinggong to leave down the mountain. The remaining people looked at each other and nodded. The Tan brothers were the first to walk away in their unique way, followed by Wen Wenhai and Xueqing. They cupped their hands to Ma Xiangyang and Sidu Ping and turned to leave. Suddenly, Wen Wenhai seemed to think of something and stopped. He said to Sidu Ping, "Chief Situ, I was passing by Lu Town the day before yesterday and poked my nose into other people's business and saved a group of farmers. I'm afraid I've offended you in any way. I hope Chief Situ will be magnanimous enough to forgive me." Sidu Ping was also a quick-witted person and hurriedly returned the greeting. "Our clan's subordinates have been rude in any way. Please forgive them, Shaoxia. If something like this happens again in the future, I hope that Shaoxia will take action again and help me maintain the clan's reputation." When Wenhai smiled and said, of course. We'll meet again someday." After he finished speaking, he and his junior sister quickly left the way they came. In the blink of an eye, only 2 people were left on the crouching ox rock. At this moment, Sidu Ping felt a little uneasy in his heart. Fortunately, Ma Xiangyang spoke up at this moment. "Sect leader Situ, I won't say anything else. Since you know about this matter and are also involved, please follow me to Myriad Sword Peak as a guest for a period of time. Everything will be decided by my sword lord. How about it?" Situ Ping nodded. "I'll follow Shaoxia's instructions." Then he followed Ma Xiangyang back the way they came. For a moment, the area around the crouching ox rock was deserted. It was already dusk. Just as a few people from the Jianghu were galloping on their horses, Zhang Xiaohua and Butcher Lu had also rushed back to the Guizhuang house. Lu Qian and Lu Yeye were originally sitting in the Zhang family's small house and chatting. At the same time, they were also helping Guisufei with some needlework. When Butcher Lu approached, Lu Ye happened to raise her head and look outside. Her gaze passed over the short walls of the Zhang family's small courtyard. When she saw the sturdy figure that she had been looking outside the door for an entire day and had lost count of how many times she had looked outside, Lu Yeye could no longer hold it in. "Wah!" She burst into tears and ran out, throwing herself into Butcher Lu's arms. "Father!" Her tears were like pearls falling onto a jade plate, dripping down in a pitter-patter. Butcher Lu hugged his daughter and patted her shoulder with heartache. His own eyes were also red. He had thought that he could let his daughter go out and have fun during the new year, but he did not expect such a thing to happen. It seemed like his daughter was scared out of her wits. Lu Qian, who walked out after Butcher Lu, was also teary-faced. After the incident, she finally saw her family after so long. She could no longer control her emotions. Zhang Kai also walked out of the house with crutches and invited Butcher Lu into the house. With so many people coming in, the narrow central room seemed even more crowded. Fortunately, the people from the same village went home first after exchanging some pleasantries. Zhang Kai sent them to the door and thanked them profusely. Zhang Xiaohua also returned to the small house to visit her two older brothers. Zhang Xiaohu and Zhang Xiaolong's injuries were more serious. At that time, they had blocked Zhang Kai inside for their father's sake. 80% of the vicious servants' kicks and punches had landed on their bodies. However, Xiaohu did not suffer any fractures. At this moment, he was lying on the Kong bed and listlessly talking to his older brother. Xiaolong's injuries were similar to Xiaohu's, but his arm was fractured after all. Last night, he was tortured by the veterinarian, Old Chen, and woke up in pain. He had been in a daze the entire day and could not hide his listlessness. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua come in, Zhang Xiaohu asked, "Lu Qian's family is here?" Zhang Xiaohua said, "Yes, they just entered the house." Zhang Xiaohu asked again, "Is there no one else?" Xiaohua asked curiously, "Who else is there?" Xiaohu said, "The matchmaker." Zhang Xiaohua was at a loss. Zhang Xiaolong laughed and said, "Don't listen to second brother's nonsense." Zhang Xiaohua immediately understood what was going on and joked, "Soon, they won't come today. They'll have to come tomorrow. It takes time to prepare a betrothal gift. No matter what, we have to thank our brave and righteous big brother. Think about it, 20 to 30 villains. Big brother, you're angry for a woman. Sister Lu Qian is already touched. If she doesn't give her heart to you, the world will age because of love." This time, it was Zhang Xiaohu's turn to be puzzled. Why would the world age because of love? Zhang Xiaohua said proudly, "If the heavens have feelings, the heavens will also age. Big brother's feelings will move the heavens and the earth." Zhang Xiaohu retorted, "Why are you showing off? What betrothal gift? It's called dowry. Besides, Lu Qian's father is a teacher. This future sister-in-law has read thousands of books. Big brother will be influenced by her and will be more scholarly than you." Zhang Xiaolong couldn't keep his face and couldn't help but scold Zhang Xiaohua. "What does a brat like you know? Don't talk nonsense with second brother. We brothers are just having fun. Don't drag Lu Qian into this. Wouldn't it be bad if someone heard?" Just as they were talking, someone came in from the central room. A crisp and slightly hoarse voice said, "Who's talking about my sister? Why are you talking nonsense? I just happened to hear it." The three brothers raised their heads. It turned out that Lu Yeye had brought Butcher Lu to see them. They saw Butcher Lu's eyes smiling as he looked at them. Lu Yeye also had a teasing expression. Behind them, Lu Qian's face was flushed red. She lowered her head and didn't say anything. As the host, Zhang Kai fell behind them with his walking stick. He didn't listen carefully to their conversation. When Zhang Xiaohua saw them come in, she jumped down from the Kong bed. Just as she was about to clean the Kong bed and invite Butcher Lu to sit down, Lu Qian and Lu Yeye nimbly tidied up before her and helped Butcher Lu sit down. It seemed that on the day that Zhang Xiaohua wasn't here, the two girls had tidied up the room more than once. Zhang Xiaohua's eyes widened as she thought, "Today, did the two sisters feed first brother and second brother?" Seeing a group of people suddenly barge in, Zhang Xiaohu didn't know what to feel. Zhang Xiaolong's face turned red, as if he had done something wrong. Zhang Xiaohu sat up and was about to get down from the Kong bed when Butcher Lu pressed him down and said kindly, "Nephew is still recuperating. Don't move." Zhang Xiaohu struggled for a bit but couldn't break free. He could only lie down obediently. Zhang Xiaohua looked at the forced kindness on his face and cursed in her heart. Zhang Xiaolong also wanted to get up, but it was inconvenient for him to do so with one hand. He tried but couldn't get up. Lu Qian hesitated for a moment and went over to support his shoulder. She helped him up. The two of them looked at each other and then separated as if they had been electrocuted. Butcher Lu also saw it and his smile bloomed like a flower. He said to Zhang Xiaolong, "Nephew is really righteous to be able to step forward in front of a bully and save my daughter and niece. Old Lu salutes you." As he spoke, he got down from the Kong bed and bowed deeply to Zhang Xiaolong. Zhang Xiaolong quickly reached out his hand and said, "Don't be like this, uncle. It's what I should do. Aren't you shortening my lifespan by doing this? Xiaohua, hurry and help uncle up." Zhang Xiaohu also took the opportunity to get up. Zhang Xiaohua quickly held Butcher Lu back, but he wasn't as strong as Butcher Lu. This salute was finished. Zhang Xiaolong was at a loss again. He turned to look at Lu Qian as if asking for help. Lu Qian didn't dare to speak, and neither did Lu Yeye. Zhang Kai spoke, "Uncle, don't be so polite with them. Young people are very hot-blooded. Weren't we like this when we were young? There's no need to be so polite. The children's injuries aren't serious. They'll be fine after a bit of rest. Let's go outside and drink some wine." Butcher Lu stopped talking and beamed with joy, saying, "Heroes are still young. We're all old. All right, you young people have a good chat. I won't disturb you anymore. We old people are going to drink." As he finished speaking, he turned around and went back to the central room. Zhang Kai also followed, leaving Lu Qian and Lu Yeye in the Zhang brothers' small room. Zhang Xiaohua looked at Lu Qian's peach blossom face and Lu Yeye's eyes darting around. She felt the awkward atmosphere in the room and immediately said, "Sister Lu Qian, you're really beautiful today. You guys talk, I'm going out to play." As she finished speaking, she ran away, leaving behind a single man and woman. The feelings between men and women were very strange. Zhang Xiaolong and Lu Qian met once in the cloth shop. If they hadn't met Lu Zhen's gang of bullies, they probably wouldn't have met a second time in this lifetime. Lu Zhen's disaster highlighted Zhang Xiaolong's hot-blooded side and gave Lu Qian an excellent impression. Now, in just a few hours of getting along with Zhang Xiaolong, Lu Qian really felt a little attached to Zhang Xiaolong. Thinking that there was such a person who would take care of her for the rest of her life, perhaps it was a fate arranged by God. Looking at Zhang Xiaolong's handsome face, although tanned by the wind and sun, he had a masculine aura that her brother did not have. Lu Qian's heart became more and more scheming. Butcher Lu stayed the night at the Zhang residence. It was a silent night. The next morning, Zhang Kai accompanied Butcher Lu to talk about farming and mulberry seeds. Guosufei accompanied Lu Qian and Lu Yeye to Zhang Xiaohua's room to take care of the injured brothers. At this time, the more Guosufei looked at Lu Qian, the more she liked her. No matter if it was her looks, her figure, or her ability to do housework, there was nothing to nitpick about. This girl actually had a lot of housekeeping skills that she didn't know. Early in the morning, Lu Qian helped her get a few pots of plants and placed them in the central room. She also placed a few pots of flowers in Xiaolong's room. The entire room immediately became brighter and more pleasing to the eye. She really was a good daughter-in-law, candidates. Chapter 17. When Lu Qian's father and brother arrived at the Zhang residence, it was already late in the morning. Butcher Lu was basking in the sun with Zhang Kai in the courtyard as they chatted. The walls of the Zhang residence's courtyard were too short, so Butcher Lu could see Mr. Lu and Lu Kai from afar. Both of them were dressed in new clothes. Lu Kai followed behind his father, holding a few huge gift boxes in his hands. Butcher Lu quickly got up and called out to Zhang Kai before going out to welcome his brother. Zhang Kai rushed into the house and shouted, "Mother, Lu Qian's father is here." When Lu Qian heard the shout, she didn't throw away her needlework like Lu Yeye and rush out of the house. Instead, she carefully placed her half-finished work on the table and waited for Guosufei to leave first before she came out. When Lu Qian walked into the courtyard, Butcher Lu and Lu Yeye had already escorted her father and brother to the gate of the fence. Zhang Kai was there to welcome them with his walking stick. After a round of introductions and greetings, Lu Qian walked in front of her father and brother and bowed. Mr. Lu held his daughter's hand and carefully looked at his daughter's expression. He saw that the familiar face didn't have any trace of what happened the day before yesterday. There was no panic or fear in her eyes, only slightly red eyes. Mr. Lu couldn't help but feel guilty. It was all his fault. He patted his daughter's shoulder and said, "It's been hard on you, child." Lu Qian wiped her eyes and said with a smile, "Daughter is fine. It's all thanks to Brother Xiaolong's family's help that we escaped from the tiger's den." Mr. Lu gestured for Lu Kai to hand over the gift boxes and said to Zhang Kai and Guisufei, "I can't thank you enough for your kindness. These small gifts aren't enough to show my gratitude. I hope our benefactors will accept them." Zhang Kai hurriedly pushed the gift boxes back and said politely, "We just happened to be there and didn't do much. In the end, it was someone else who helped us." Mr. Lu insisted on handing it over, saying, "It's all thanks to you guys. If it weren't for your help, my family's child would have met with a calamity long ago. Those two Xiaoxia might not have been able to see them." When Butcher Lu saw the two of them pushing the gift back and forth, he couldn't help but feel anxious. He reached out to take it and said, "You don't have to be so courteous. Old brother Zhang, my eldest brother's kind intentions, you don't have to refuse." After he finished speaking, he carried the gift box into the central room. Mr. Lu smiled and said to Zhang Kai, "This second brother of mine has a fiery temper. I hope old brother Zhang doesn't mind." Zhang Kai also smiled and said, "There's no harm in that. Your younger brother is a sentimental person. We're just being a little overboard. Please, let's talk inside." Zhang Kai led Mr. Lu into the central room. The central room of the Zhang family was very small and didn't have many chairs. Thus, there was no distinction between the host and the guest. Everyone sat down as they pleased. After Mr. Lu sat down, he once again expressed his gratitude for the Zhang family's kindness. He took out some scattered silver from his robes and placed it on the small table in the room, saying, "Old brother Zhang, your family's injuries were caused by the bullies saving my daughter. It's reasonable for us to take responsibility. You can take this silver to seek medical treatment. Our family is poor and can only take this much. Please forgive us, old brother." This time, Zhang Kai was determined not to accept it. He said, "Xiaohua has already told you what happened. At the time, the bullies had already paid the silver, but we were afraid that they would come back and ask for more. We didn't dare to use it. That Xiaoxiaowen who saved us has already given us a lot of silver. It's enough to treat our injuries and buy medicine. We absolutely cannot take this silver." Lu Kai said from the side, "Old Uncle Zhang, this is this and this is this. We should give this silver. We can't just stand by and watch you guys get injured while saving my little sisters. How can we not pay for the medical expenses? What kind of logic is that?" Butcher Lu also scratched his head and said, "Old brother Zhang, you should just take it. In a few days, I'll also give you some silver and bring some meat over." Zhang Kai said, "My two brothers, please don't do this. We didn't save people for the silver. Moreover, we already have the silver to treat our injuries. We absolutely cannot accept this." Thus, these people were given to each other by each other. After a while, Zhang Kai refused to give in no matter what. At this time, Lu Qian opened her mouth and said to Mr. Lu, "Father, since old Uncle Zhang doesn't want to take this silver, you should take it back first. I have an idea. What do you think?" Mr. Lu said, "All right, you've always been exceptionally intelligent since you were young. What good idea do you have this time?" Lu Qian said, "Old Uncle Zhang and his family got injured while saving us. The two of us will stay here to take care of old Uncle Zhang and his family until their injuries are completely healed. Firstly, old Uncle Zhang's family is injured and they still need to take care of the elderly. Antigua can't handle everything alone. Secondly, old Uncle Zhang and his family can't move freely. They also need people to take care of them. This is what we should do. What do you think?" Mr. Lu thought for a moment and said, "It's my fault. Qianer's idea is very good. What do you think, second brother?" Butcher Lu patted his chest and said, "Very good, very good. I think so too." Lu Yeye also nodded in agreement. The matter was settled like this for now. Then, Mr. Lu and Lu Kai went into the inner room. Zhang Xiaolong and Zhang Xiaohu were still lying on the bed. When they heard Butcher Lu's shout, the two of them wanted to get up. However, they were stopped by Guosufei and the others. Now that they saw someone come in, they knew it was Lu Qian's father and brother. They quickly got up. This time, Lu Qian didn't come up to help Zhang Xiaolong. Guosufei carefully helped her son to sit on the kong. Only then did Mr. Lu carefully size up this courageous young man. Zhang Xiaolong was a very masculine young man. He was about the same age as Lu Kai and looked very ordinary. He had thick eyebrows and big eyes like Zhang Kai. However, his eyes were bruised and the corners of his mouth were cracked. However, from the determination in his eyes, one could see that he was a down-to-earth person. The clothes he was wearing weren't new either. They were patched up, but they were very clean and looked very comfortable. Zhang Xiaolong's arm was still in a splint, so he couldn't move casually. His hands were placed in front of his chest. Looking at this pair of slightly rough hands, one could tell that he was an expert in farming. Mr. Lu looked at this young man who was about the same age as his son but had a completely different temperament. He couldn't help but secretly nod. Only such an outstanding child could stand up for others when they were in danger. Zhang Xiaolong saw Mr. Lu staring at him and couldn't help but feel anxious. He didn't know what to do. Mr. Lu looked at him for a while before speaking. He thanked him for saving his daughter and hoped that he would recover well. Then, he spoke for a while before leaving the small room. As he walked, he said to Zhang Kai, "Brother Zhang, you have a good son. You are blessed." Zhang Kai smiled from ear to ear. He didn't forget to be humble even while leaning on his walking stick. "Same to you. Your son is also very, very good." Seeing that it was almost noon, Zhang Kai ordered Guosufei to arrange wine and food to entertain Mr. Lu and his group. The Zhang family's financial situation was much worse than Mr. Lu's, so the food they ate was also very ordinary. Zhang Kai expressed his apologies. Mr. Lu and Butcher Lu were both forthright people, so they didn't mind when they chatted. They toasted and ate quite a bit. Only Zhang Xiaohua was the happiest. She had meat to eat for 2 consecutive days. She couldn't wait for these days to come a few more times. After the meal, Mr. Lu and his group chatted with Zhang Kai for a while. Taking advantage of the fact that it was still early, they hurried back to Bali Gully with the 2 girls. The Zhang family only had 1 family of injured people lying in bed. Fortunately, it was winter now. Usually, at this time of the year, they would stay at home to keep warm. They didn't need to plow the fields or weed the fields. However, this afternoon, everyone felt that something was missing. When the sky gradually darkened and Guosufei was preparing to cook, she realized that there was less help from the 2 girls in the family today. She also had to cook less food. She couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. The liveliness in this family was strange. There were originally only 6 people in the family. After so many years, they didn't feel anything. In just a few days, with the addition of 2 girls, the family actually had more liveliness than before. After these few days, everyone left. The liveliness naturally disappeared. Only then did she realize that liveliness was really good. She actually missed the few days when there were more outsiders. After hastily cooking, Zhang Xiaohua and her mother served the 2 brothers. Everyone sat under the oil lamp. Guosufei said, "I wonder if Lu Qian and the rest have eaten?" Zhang Kai said, looking at the sky, "They probably just got home. They won't be able to cook in time. I guess they'll have to eat at Butcher Lu's place." Zhang Xiaohua said, "Definitely. Maybe there'll be streaky pork tonight." Guosufei said, "By the way, Xiaohua, you've been to their house. What's their house like?" Zhang Xiaohua described the situation of Lu Qian and Lu Yeye's house according to her own knowledge. In fact, Guosufei had always wanted to ask about Lu Qian's family situation, but it wasn't easy to ask from Lu Qian. Yesterday, when she saw Butcher Lu, she didn't have the chance to ask. Today, when she saw Mr. Lu and Lu Kai's behavior and temperament, she felt a knot in her heart. Now that she heard Zhang Xiaohua's words, her heart was even more knotted. She frowned and said to Zhang Kai worriedly, "Old man, Do you think Lu Qian will like our family Xiaolong? No one interrupted. Zhang Xiaolong's face was a little gloomy. Zhang Kai said, "This depends on fate. It's useless for us to talk about it. Let's just leave it to fate." Zhang Xiaohu said, "Mother, I feel that Lu Qian is very meticulous. She should have read a lot of books. Needless to say, she's educated and reasonable. She can also do a lot of housework. She's really good. She's much better than the energetic Lu Yeye. Looking at how she takes care of Big Brother, she's a little interesting." Zhang Xiaohua said, "Second brother, this daughter-in-law has to be married one by one. Don't be too anxious. Even if you don't mention Lu Yeye, mother will consider it for you." Zhang Xiaohu's face was a little embarrassed. He kicked Zhang Xiaohua and said, "We're talking about Big Brother. Don't change the topic. There's nothing between me and Lu Yeye." Zhang Kai said, "Second brother, even if there's something between you and her, you have to think about your big brother first. Looking at our family situation, it's already very difficult to find a wife. You should wait a little longer." Guosufei interrupted and said, "Old man, don't you still have those banknotes?" Zhang Kai interrupted her and glared at her, "Don't mention that. You have to return it to someone else." Then, everyone felt bored. Not long after, they blew out the oil lamp and went to sleep. Zhang Xiaolong tossed and turned all night. He couldn't fall asleep. He didn't know if it was because of the pain in his body or because of the thoughts in his heart. However, his tossing and turning didn't affect Zhang Xiaohua's dream at all. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.